Echoes of Elmswood. In the quaint village of Elmswood, nestled between fog-laden hills and ancient whispering woods, stood the old Harrowick mansion. It had remained uninhabited for decades, its history marred by mysterious disappearances and whispers of the supernatural. Despite its notorious reputation, Nathan, a young historian with a keen interest in paranormal phenomena, decided to explore the mansion, intent on uncovering its secrets. Nathan arrived as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the dilapidated facade of the mansion. The air was thick with the scent of mildew and decay as he pushed open the massive oak door, its hinges groaning under the weight of years neglected. As he stepped inside, his flashlight swept across the grand foyer, dust motes dancing in the beam. The house seemed to breathe with a life of its own, the walls whispering with the echoes of the past. Nathan's heart thudded loudly in his chest as he made his way deeper into the bowels of the house, his recorder capturing every creak and sigh of the floorboards. In the heart of the mansion, Nathan found the library, its shelves burdened with ancient tomes. As he browsed the titles, a gentle wind whispered through a broken pane, and a book tumbled to the floor, its pages fluttering open to a chapter titled, The Legend of Lady Harrowick. According to legend, Lady Harrowick had vanished on a stormy night, her spirit forever trapped within the mansion, searching for her lost children. Intrigued, Nathan read aloud from the book, not noticing the temperature drop, the air around him growing colder with each word. A soft sob broke the silence, sending a chill down his spine. He turned, flashlight quivering in his hand, to find the apparition of a woman in a faded Victorian gown standing before him. Her eyes, empty of life, stared back at him, filled with an eternal sorrow. "Help me," the ghostly figure whispered, her voice a mere echo of despair. Nathan, though terrified, felt a surge of compassion for the spectral woman. "What can I do to help you?" he asked, his voice steady despite his trembling hands. "Find them, my children," she pleaded before fading into the shadows, leaving Nathan alone with the chilling silence of the library. Determined to help Lady Harrowick find peace, Nathan embarked on a night-long investigation, using every tool at his disposal. As dawn broke over Elmswood, he finally uncovered a hidden chamber beneath the mansion. Inside, the skeletal remains of two small children lay, holding each other in a macabre embrace. Nathan called the authorities, who confirmed that the remains belonged to Lady Harrowick's long-lost children. With the discovery, the hauntings ceased, as if Lady Harrowick's spirit, along with her children's, had found the peace they were denied in life. Nathan left Elmswood with a heavy heart, forever changed by the night at Harrowick Mansion. He knew the world of the living and the dead were more intertwined than he had ever imagined, and that some houses held more than just dusty memories. They held echoes of lives once lived. Upon leaving Elmswood, Nathan couldn't shake the haunting images of Lady Harrowick and her children from his mind. He had exposed a sorrowful truth hidden for centuries, but countless questions lingered. He found himself returning to the village, drawn back as if by the spectral hands of fate. In the ensuing weeks, Nathan dedicated himself to piecing together the history of the Harrowick family and the dark legacy of the mansion. Delving into old parish records and diaries found in the mansion's attic, he discovered a tangled web of grief, betrayal, and curse. A curse said to doom any Harrowick born to tragic fates. Armed with this new knowledge, Nathan organized a séance in the mansion, seeking to contact Lady Harrowick's spirit and perhaps offer her some semblance of closure. He invited renowned mediums and paranormal experts to participate, and on a stormy night, under the flickering light of candles, they gathered in the library where he had first encountered her ghost. As the clock chimed midnight, the air grew thick, and a palpable tension filled the room. The mediums chanted in unison, their voices weaving through the darkness. A cold wind swept through the library, extinguishing the candles, plunging the room into darkness. Then silence. "Nathan," a voice called out from the shadows, a voice he recognized as Lady Harrowick's. Nathan responded, his voice barely a whisper. "Lady Heroic, we've gathered here to help you. What keeps you bound to this world?" "It is not just my children." The ghostly figure emerged, her form clearer and more composed than before. "It is the curse. We must break it to free all of us." Nathan listened intently as Lady Heroic recounted a dark tale. Centuries ago, a rival had cursed the Heroic lineage after a bitter feud. The curse had caused each generation untold suffering, culminating in her tragic loss. To break the curse, Nathan and the mediums performed a ritual, using ancient rites described in the mansion's forgotten texts. They formed a circle, holding hands, chanting incantations as the storm outside raged, mirroring the turmoil within the mansion. As the ritual reached its climax, a brilliant light filled the room. The air vibrated with energy, and the ghost of Lady Heroic, along with the faint, joyful echoes of children's laughter, passed through the walls, disappearing into the night. When the light subsided, a profound peace settled over the mansion. The curse was broken, the spirits freed, and for the first time in centuries, Heroic Mansion felt just like any other old house. Nathan left the mansion at dawn, the weight of the past lifted from his shoulders. The village of Elmswood slowly returned to normalcy, with fewer whispers of hauntings and more of historical intrigue. Nathan himself went on to write a book about his experiences, becoming a noted figure in the study of the paranormal. As he penned the last words of his book, Nathan realized he had not just uncovered the secrets of a haunted mansion. He had restored peace to a troubled soul and ended a cycle of suffering. He knew his life would never be the same, forever marked by the nights he spent at Heroic Mansion. Nathan's life continued to intertwine with the spirits he had once sought to understand. Although the Heroic curse was broken, the experience had ignited a deeper passion for unraveling the mysteries of the paranormal world. He traveled across the country, visiting sites renowned for their supernatural occurrences, each time uncovering layers of untold stories that whispered from the shadows of forgotten places. His adventures led him to a coastal town where the legend of a phantom ship said to appear on foggy nights piqued his interest. The locals spoke of an ancient mariner who roamed the shores, eternally searching for his lost love. Nathan, driven by a newfound duty to aid restless spirits, embarked on a night vigil by the rocky beach. As the moon cast a silvery glow over the sea, the ghostly outline of a ship materialized in the distance, and an old sea shanty filled the air, mournful and eerie. As the ship approached, Nathan could see the figure of the mariner at the helm, his face etched with years of sorrow. The ghostly sailor spotted Nathan, and recognizing a kindred spirit, steered the phantom vessel closer to shore. In a voice that sounded like the crashing of waves, the mariner shared his tale of a lover lost to the sea, his life condemned to an eternal quest to reunite with her. Moved by the mariner's story, Nathan vowed to help him. He researched old ship logs and town records, piecing together the tragic story of a young woman who had perished in a storm while waiting for her sailor to return home. Armed with this knowledge, Nathan returned to the beach the following night, a locket containing a painting of the mariner's beloved in hand, which he had discovered in a local antique shop. As the ship appeared once again, Nathan held up the locket to the sea breeze. The mariner, upon seeing the portrait of his lost love, wept tears that seemed to merge with the ocean spray. A profound peace descended upon the area, and the ship slowly faded into the mist, its departure marked by the lightening of the horizon and the promise of dawn. Nathan's reputation grew, and with each spirit he helped, his understanding of the supernatural deepened. Yet, no matter where his quests took him, his thoughts often wandered back to Elmswood, to the Heroic Mansion, where it all began. It was there he learned that the line between the living and the dead was not a barrier but a bridge, one that he had crossed and would continue to traverse in his lifelong quest to bring peace to the restless souls of the past. With each mystery unraveled, Nathan felt a connection to the otherworldly forces, a bond forged through empathy and understanding. His journey was not just about ghost hunting. It was about healing, about bringing closure to the unfinished stories of those who could no longer tell them themselves. And as he looked forward to his next adventure, he knew the echoes of Elmswood would never be far from his mind, guiding him as he ventured into the unknown, always ready to listen, to help, and to heal. On one of his trips, Nathan found himself drawn to the secluded village of Grey Hollow, notorious for its haunted forest, where townsfolk rarely ventured after dark. The legend spoke of the Witch of Wraithwood, a figure shrouded in mystery and fear, believed to curse anyone who dared disrupt her eternal solitude. The locals shared hushed stories of missing animals and eerie lights seen flickering among the twisted trees. Intrigued and undeterred, Nathan decided to explore Wraithwood. As twilight fell, he entered the forest, the air thick with the scent of pine and a palpable sense of unease. The deeper he ventured, the more the atmosphere thickened, until the very woods seemed to whisper his name. Carried on the wind that rustled through the leaves, Nathan set up camp in a small clearing, surrounded by ancient oaks that cast gnarled shadows in the moonlight. He began his vigil, recorder in hand, ready to capture any evidence of the supernatural activity the villagers had described. Hours passed with only the sounds of the forest keeping him company, until a sudden coldness swept through the area, chilling him to the bone. A soft, melodic humming filled the air, ethereal and hauntingly beautiful. Nathan followed the sound, pushing through a dense thicket until he came upon a small weathered cottage, its windows aglow with a strange, pulsating light. There, in the heart of the forest, he saw her, the Witch of Wraithwood. Contrary to the fearsome tales, she appeared not as a malevolent sorceress, but as a sorrowful spirit, her eyes filled with centuries of loneliness and regret. She noticed Nathan, and her expression softened, the haunting melody fading into silence. "Why have you come?" she asked, her voice echoing the melancholy that seemed to permeate the very air around them. "To understand, to learn, and if possible, to help," Nathan replied, his voice steady despite the overwhelming aura of her presence. The witch studied him for a moment before nodding slowly. "Then listen, for my story is one of love, betrayal, and a curse that bound me to these woods." She told Nathan of a time long ago, when she was not a witch but a healer, wrongfully accused of witchcraft after a love affair with a powerful man ended in tragedy. The man, threatened by scandal, had betrayed her, leading to her persecution and eventual execution. Her spirit was tethered to Wraithwood, bound by a curse born of betrayal and heartbreak. Moved by her story, Nathan promised to help clear her name, to tell her true story to those who would listen. Over the next few days, he gathered evidence of her innocence and the good deeds she had performed as a healer. He presented his findings to the villagers, slowly changing their perceptions of the Witch of Wraithwood. With the truth revealed, the atmosphere in the forest began to change. The heavy air lifted, and the once menacing trees now seemed to stand guard over the cottage with a protective grace. The witch's spirit, finally understood and forgiven, was released from the curse, her form dissolving into the night air, leaving behind a calm that hadn't been felt in Wraithwood for centuries. Nathan left the village with a sense of accomplishment, knowing he had restored peace not only to the spirit of the witch, but also to Grey Hollow. Each encounter, each story brought him closer to understanding the delicate balance between the spiritual and material worlds, teaching him lessons of compassion and justice that he carried into each new mystery. As he continued his journey, Nathan realized that his true calling was not just to seek out spirits, but to mend the broken narratives of the past, giving voice to those silenced by time and superstition. Each destination brought new challenges, but also new opportunities to make a difference, one spirit at a time. Nathan's reputation as a mediator between the living and the spectral grew, drawing him to places steeped in deep histories and darker mysteries. Each location brought not only tales of hauntings, but also of unresolved grief and injustices that spanned decades or even centuries. It was on a mild spring evening when Nathan received an invitation that would lead him to one of his most challenging and enlightening experiences. The invitation came from the town of Old Haven, a coastal community with a storied past of seafaring legends and a lighthouse that had stood as a silent sentinel over the tumultuous waters for over 200 years. The lighthouse had been decommissioned after a tragic incident where a lighthouse keeper named Jeremiah Foster had supposedly gone mad, claiming he was haunted by the ghosts of shipwrecked sailors before ultimately disappearing under mysterious circumstances. Upon arriving in Old Haven, Nathan was greeted by a descendant of Jeremiah, Eleanor Foster, who now cared for the historic lighthouse. Eleanor shared her family's burden, a legacy tainted by rumors and superstitions surrounding her ancestors' disappearance. Determined to uncover the truth and restore her family's name, she sought Nathan's expertise to investigate the lighthouse's paranormal activity and uncover the true story behind Jeremiah's fate. As Nathan spent nights at the lighthouse, he witnessed firsthand the eerie phenomena that had fueled local legends: ghostly apparitions of drowned sailors, the mournful sound of a foghorn on clear nights, and a mysterious light emanating from the lighthouse beacon, despite it being inactive for years. Delving into historical records and Jeremiah's journals, Nathan pieced together a tale of heroism and tragedy. Jeremiah had rescued several sailors from shipwrecks, but one stormy night, unable to save a young sailor, he was consumed by guilt and despair. His hauntings were not punishments but manifestations of his unresolved sorrow and the lost souls he couldn't save. With Eleanor's help, Nathan organized a ceremony to honor Jeremiah and the shipwrecked sailors, inviting the town and descendants of the survivors whom Jeremiah had saved. The ceremony was a cathartic event for the community, blending local lore with the unveiling of Jeremiah's heroic acts. As the townspeople came to understand the true nature of the hauntings, the atmosphere around the lighthouse shifted from one of fear to one of respect and gratitude. That night, as Nathan and Eleanor watched from the cliffside, the ghostly figures of Jeremiah and the sailors appeared, their forms glowing under the moonlight. With nods of acknowledgement and smiles, they faded into the sea mist, their spirits finally at peace. The healing of Old Haven's historical wounds marked a profound chapter in Nathan's journey, reinforcing his role as a bridge between the misunderstood past and the present. He realized that each ghostly encounter was more than a spectral phenomenon. It was a call for understanding and reconciliation, for stories that needed to be told and heard. As Nathan left Old Haven, the lighthouse behind him bathed in the gentle pre-dawn light, he felt a deep connection to the endless cycle of storytelling and healing. He knew his journey would continue, as long as there were tales that lingered in the shadows, waiting for someone to illuminate them. With each step, he carried the lessons of Old Haven with him, ready for the next story to unfold, wherever it might call him next. Nathan's path next took him to the small mountain town of Cedar Ridge, where rumors of a haunted mine had been circulating for generations. The Silver Echo Mine, once thriving during the gold rush, was now an abandoned relic, its shafts long since empty of miners, but reputedly not of spirits. Upon arriving in Cedar Ridge, Nathan was met by Anne, a local historian, who provided him with old maps and newspaper articles detailing the mine's history and the tragic accident that had claimed many lives. Armed with this information, Nathan ventured into the mine at dusk, equipped with his usual array of recording devices and sensors. The air inside was thick with dust and a palpable sense of foreboding. As he descended deeper into the mine, Nathan could hear faint echoes, the distant sound of pickaxes against stone, and muffled voices that seemed to come from the very walls. These auditory hallucinations grew clearer as he approached the heart of the old mine where the collapse had occurred. Here, he set up his equipment and began to reach out, asking questions into the darkness, his voice bouncing off the unyielding rock. Hours passed with minimal activity, until suddenly, a cold gust swept through the tunnel, extinguishing his lantern and plunging him into darkness. In the silence that followed, a voice whispered, clear and resonant, "Help us find peace." Nathan, though startled, responded with empathy, asking for names, seeking to understand their stories. One by one, the voices emerged from the darkness, sharing their tales of hard lives and untimely deaths, their spirits bound to the mind by their sudden and tragic ends. Nathan listened, recording every word, every name, promising to bring their stories to light. After leaving the mine, Nathan worked with Anne to create a memorial for the miners at the site of the old mine entrance. They organized a community event where the names of the deceased were read aloud, and a plaque was unveiled, honoring their memory and acknowledging their contribution to the town's history. The ceremony brought the community together, many descendants of the miners attending, touched by the recognition of their ancestors' hardships and sacrifices. That night, as Nathan revisited the mine, he felt a significant change in the atmosphere. The air was lighter, and the eerie sounds had ceased. In their place was a quiet, almost peaceful silence. He knew then that the spirits had found some measure of peace, their stories acknowledged, their existence remembered. With each encounter, Nathan's understanding of the supernatural deepened, as did his respect for the past and the people whose lives had shaped it. He knew that his role was not just to investigate the paranormal, but to restore dignity to those who had been forgotten, giving voice to the voiceless, and bringing closure to their lingering spirits. As he left Cedar Ridge, Nathan felt a reaffirmation of his life's work. Each place he visited added layers to his understanding of the human condition, past and present, and he was eager to continue this journey, knowing that every shadow held a story, every whisper a plea for recognition. He was ready to answer the next call, wherever it might lead, always with the hope of making a difference, one spirit at a time. As autumn settled over the land, casting a mosaic of orange and gold across the landscape, Nathan's travels brought him to the serene town of Willow's End. Known for its picturesque beauty and tranquil lakeside setting, Willow's End also harbored a less peaceful attribute: the legend of the Weeping Widow, a spectral figure said to wander the lake's edge under the full moon. The story, as relayed to Nathan by the town's elder librarian, Ms. Hargrove, told of a young woman named Eliza who had lost her husband to the lake one stormy night. Overcome with grief, Eliza had thrown herself into the same waters soon after, her spirit unable to find rest. Once every year, on the anniversary of her demise, she appeared, weeping and clad in her bridal gown, forever mourning her lost love. Intrigued by this haunting tale, Nathan decided to stay through the upcoming full moon to observe and possibly interact with the Weeping Widow. He set up his camp near the reported sightings along the misty shores of the lake, his equipment primed to capture any anomalies. As the moon rose, silvering the dark waters, the soft lapping of the waves against the shore was accompanied by a sorrowful wailing that chilled the air. Through the mist, a figure in white emerged, her face obscured by a veil of tears, her hands reaching out as if searching for someone long lost. Nathan approached cautiously, speaking in gentle tones. "Eliza, is that you? I'm here to listen, to help you if I can," he called into the mist. The figure paused, her sobbing quieting slightly as she turned towards Nathan's voice. "Who calls my name?" she whispered, her voice a broken melody of despair. "My name is Nathan. I've come to hear your story, to understand your sorrow," he replied, inching closer. Eliza's spirit seemed to waver, torn between the desire to communicate and the impulse to fade back into the mists. Finally, she spoke, her story unfolding in a torrent of heartache and regret. She told of her young love, swept away by the cruel currents, and of her unbearable grief that followed. Bound by her despair, she was condemned to relive her sorrow, unable to move beyond her earthly bindings. Nathan listened with a heavy heart, then gently suggested a way to perhaps ease her pain. "Eliza, let's honor your love, not with tears, but with remembrance. Share with me something about him, something joyful, something cherished." Encouraged, Eliza recounted memories of her days spent by the lake, laughter-filled days before tragedy struck. With each recollection, the air around them seemed to lighten, the oppressive sorrow lifting slightly. Nathan, seizing the moment, conducted a small ritual by the lake, casting flowers into the water, symbolizing the release of grief and the embracing of memories. He spoke words of peace and release, urging Eliza to let go of her sorrow and embrace the peace she deserved. As dawn tinged the horizon with pink and gold, the spectral figure of Eliza began to dissipate, her form becoming one with the morning mist. Her last words, "Thank you, kind soul," echoed softly as she vanished, leaving behind a serene calm that blanketed the lake. With the weeping widow's spirit settled, Nathan packed his gear, his spirit uplifted by the knowledge that he had helped another tormented soul find peace. Each encounter left him more convinced of his path, his role as a bridge between the seen and unseen, the remembered and forgotten. As Nathan left Willow's End, the sun rising over the peaceful lake, he felt the weight of many such stories yet to be told, each waiting for someone to listen, to understand, to help. And so, he continued onward, drawn to the next story, the next ghost, the next chance to mend the frayed edges of the spirit world. Continuing the journey, Nathan's travels eventually led him to the historic town of Merrowdale, where the story of the Midnight Maestro had caught his attention. The tale was about a once celebrated composer, Vincent Marlowe, who, after a scandal and a mysterious tragedy, reportedly haunted the old concert hall where his final symphony was never performed. As Nathan entered Merrowdale, the chill of the fall was setting in, and the leaves crunched underfoot with a sound reminiscent of applause. The old concert hall, a once grand edifice now shrouded in ivy and neglect, stood at the town's edge, looking as if it mourned its forgotten glory. Upon meeting with the local historical society, Nathan learned that Vincent Marlowe was said to roam the hall's stage at midnight, his ghostly figure often seen by passers-by through the dusty windows, conducting an orchestra of shadows in the dim moonlight. The locals avoided the hall after dusk, the air around it thick with the palpable sadness of a passion unfulfilled. Determined to uncover the truth and perhaps bring peace to the troubled spirit, Nathan arranged to spend several nights inside the concert hall. Equipped with his recording devices, cameras, and a healthy respect for the arts, he set up his base in the shadowy wings of the auditorium. The first night was uneventful until the clock struck midnight. As the deep chimes echoed through the empty hall, a cold breeze swept across the room, and the curtains on the stage inexplicably rustled. Then, faint at first, the sound of a piano trickled into the air, the keys played by unseen hands crafting a melody both haunting and beautiful. Nathan stood silently, his recorder capturing every note. Gradually, the figure of Vincent Marlowe materialized at the grand piano, his form transparent yet unmistakably passionate, lost in the creation of his music. Nathan watched, mesmerized by the performance, the notes seeming to fill the voids of the hall with life and longing. After the piece ended, the apparition of Marlowe turned to Nathan, as if aware of his presence for the first time. "Who dares witness my lament?" The ghost spoke, his voice a whisper of silk and sorrow. "I'm Nathan, and I've come to listen, to understand." Nathan responded gently. "Your music, it's incredible. You deserve to be heard." Touched by Nathan's sincerity, the ghost of Marlowe shared his tale of woe, of love lost, a reputation ruined by jealousy, and a life cut tragically short before his final composition could be performed. His spirit, he revealed, was bound to the concert hall, tied to his unfinished symphony, his masterpiece that had never seen the light of day. Moved by Marlowe's story, Nathan proposed a plan to help the composer find peace. "Let's perform your symphony, Vincent. Let's complete it, share it with the world as you intended." With the help of the Historical Society and local musicians intrigued by the story, Nathan arranged for a night of remembrance and performance. The event was set. The town gathered in the concert hall, the air buzzing with anticipation and a touch of the supernatural. As the orchestra played Marlowe's final symphony, the audience was captivated by the emotion and beauty of the music. Nathan watched as Marlowe's ghost, standing at the helm of the stage, conducted alongside the conductor, a look of sublime peace settling over his spectral features. With the last note hanging in the air, Vincent Marlowe's apparition bowed deeply, tears of joy and release shimmering on his ghostly cheeks. As the audience erupted in applause, his form dissipated into the night air, his spirit finally free, his masterpiece complete. As the crowd left, moved and whispering of the night's spectral magic, Nathan packed up his gear, his heart full. Each story he helped conclude not only brought peace to restless spirits, but also reconnected communities with their forgotten histories. With the midnight maestro now at rest, Nathan left Marrowdale under the stars, the echoes of the symphony lingering in his mind, a reminder of the power of understanding and closure. Ready for wherever his unique talents were needed next, he drove into the night, guided by the eternal search for those who still waited in the shadows, hoping to be heard. Nathan's next destination was the isolated town of Frost Hollow, nestled deep in the snow-covered mountains. Legend spoke of the Frost Phantom, a spectral figure seen roaming the snowy paths of the forest surrounding the town each winter. The Phantom was said to be the spirit of a logger named Elliot Granger who had vanished one stormy night a century ago, never to be found. Upon arrival, Nathan met with several town elders who shared eerie tales of encounters with the Frost Phantom. They described seeing a ghostly figure, covered in frost, his eyes hollow with despair, appearing during the first snow of each winter. The sightings were always accompanied by a sudden drop in temperature and the inexplicable sound of distant logging. Intrigued by these consistent and vivid accounts, Nathan prepared for a long stay through the winter months. He rented a small cabin near the edge of the forest, where most sightings had occurred. As the first snow began to fall, blanketing the landscape in a pristine layer of white, Nathan ventured into the frosty woods, equipped with thermal imaging cameras and audio recording devices. On the third night, as the moon cast a silvery glow over the snow, Nathan sensed a sudden chill that seemed to pierce through his layers of clothing. Turning his thermal camera in the direction of the cold burst, he caught the faint image of a figure moving through the trees. The figure was that of a man, his movements laborious, as if struggling against a relentless wind. Nathan followed, keeping a safe distance, as the figure seemed to be leading him deeper into the forest. Eventually, they reached a clearing where the remnants of an old logging camp could still be made out under the snow. Here, the figure stopped and turned towards Nathan, its expression sorrowful. "Who are you?" Nathan called out into the chilling silence. The figure's voice was a hollow echo. "Elliot, I cannot rest. My story untold. My life unfinished." Nathan approached carefully, speaking with compassion. "Tell me your story, Elliot. I'm here to listen." The Phantom of Elliot Granger revealed a tale of betrayal and tragedy. He had discovered a vein of gold under the forest, but before he could claim it, he was betrayed by his partner who wanted the fortune for himself. In a fierce struggle during a blinding snowstorm, Elliot was left for dead, his body never recovered by the townsfolk. Determined to bring resolution to Elliot's restless spirit, Nathan researched the historical records of the town and the logging camp. He found evidence of Elliot's discovery and betrayal in old land deeds and forgotten letters stored in the town hall's archives. With this new evidence, Nathan organized a town meeting where he presented his findings, clearing Elliot's name and revealing the truth about his death and the deceit that led to it. He urged the townsfolk to recognize Elliot's contribution to the town's history and to honor his memory. The town council agreed and decided to erect a memorial in the forest clearing, dedicating it to Elliot Granger and the pioneers of Frost Hollow. On the day of the dedication, as the plaque was unveiled, a gentle snow began to fall, and the air warmed slightly, the oppressive chill lifting. As the townspeople left the clearing, Nathan lingered, feeling the peace that now hung over the place. He thought he saw a fleeting smile on the face of Elliot's phantom before it faded away, dissolving into the snowflakes that now seemed to sparkle a little brighter under the winter sun. Nathan left Frost Hollow with a sense of fulfillment, knowing that he had helped another soul find peace. Each ghostly encounter deepened his understanding of the human experience, its pains, betrayals, and ultimately, its resolutions and redemptions. As he drove away, the snowy paths of Frost Hollow behind him, He was already drawn to the next call, the next mystery, ready to lend his ear to those still whispering from the shadows. As winter's grip loosened and spring heralded new beginnings, Nathan's travels led him to the southern coast, where the haunting melody of a ghostly siren was said to echo through the seaside cliffs of Lorne's Cove. Local folklore told of a siren, Lorelei, who had been seen by fishermen and sailors for generations, her songs both beautiful and tragic, leading to numerous shipwrecks along the rocky shores. Intrigued by the blend of danger and allure that such stories held, Nathan arrived in Lorne's Cove, the salty air and cries of seabirds creating a backdrop that felt suspended between the realms of land and sea. He spoke with local mariners and gathered accounts of encounters with Lorelei, each story weaving a tapestry of myth and mystery that compelled Nathan to explore the cliffs by night. Equipped with a set of recording devices and a strong resolve, Nathan set out as dusk painted the horizon with streaks of crimson and gold. He made his way along the coastal path, where the surf crashed against the rocks, sending sprays of white foam into the air. The full moon cast a luminous path across the water, and it was then that he first heard it, a hauntingly beautiful song that seemed to drift on the wind, ethereal and mesmerizing. Drawn by the sound, Nathan found himself at the edge of a cliff overlooking the hidden cove. Below, in the moonlit waters, he saw her, Lorelei. Her hair flowed around her like a veil of dark seaweed, her eyes glimmering with an otherworldly light. She sang to the rhythm of the waves, her voice carrying sorrow and longing. Nathan recorded her song, careful not to interrupt her melancholic performance. When the melody finally ceased, he called out, "Lorelei, why do you sing such sad songs? What binds you to these cliffs?" The siren turned toward him, her expression one of deep sorrow mingled with fleeting hope. "I sing for my lost love, a sailor who perished in these waters," she replied. "My song is a lament, a call for him to return to me, though he never will." Moved by her tale of eternal love and loss, Nathan felt compelled to help. "Let me share your story," he offered. "Perhaps by understanding your grief, we can find a way to ease it." Lorelei nodded, and over several nights, she shared her tale with Nathan. He learned of her transformation from a human to a siren, a curse placed by a jealous sea witch who invited her love. Nathan researched ancient maritime legends and consulted with experts in mythological curses. He discovered a ritual that might lift the curse, allowing Lorelei to find peace, potentially freeing her from her eternal watch. With Lorelei's consent, Nathan prepared the ritual on a night when the sea was calm, and a crescent moon hung low in the sky. He used sea salt, shells from the cove, and a lock of hair Lorelei had given him, arranging them in an ancient symbol on the cliffside. As he chanted the incantations, the wind rose, and the sea churned. Waves crashed against the cliffs with booming fury, and for a moment, Nathan feared he had failed. But then, the storm calmed as suddenly as it had begun. The sea became still, and the air cleared. Lorelei's form began to shimmer, her features softening, becoming more human. With a final glance at Nathan, a smile of gratitude on her lips, she dove into the sea. The water glowed briefly, and then she was gone. The next morning, the fishermen reported a calm sea and a clarity in the water they hadn't seen in years. Nathan stood on the cliffs at dawn, looking out at the peaceful ocean, feeling a profound connection to the lore of the sea and its many mysteries. As he left Lorne's Cove, Nathan knew that each spirit's story was a thread in the larger tapestry of human experience, interwoven with elements of love, loss, redemption, and sometimes release. He drove on, his heart open to the next call of the unseen, ready to lend his voice to those who no longer had one in the world of the living. Nathan's reputation as a gentle mediator between the earthly and the ethereal grew, leading him to the remote village of Thornfield, nestled in the dense forests of the Pacific Northwest. Thornfield was rumored to be haunted by the Green Lady, a ghostly figure seen wandering the forest, her long, flowing emerald gown blending seamlessly with the foliage. Upon arrival, Nathan was greeted by a community steeped in folklore and wary of outsiders. He spent the first few days engaging with the locals at the village inn, collecting their stories and gaining their trust. The Green Lady, they said, was the spirit of Isabella Thorne, the wife of the village's founder, who had vanished into the woods one foggy evening never to return. Her disappearance had birthed a legend that her spirit still searched for something or someone she had lost. Compelled by the consistency of the accounts and the emotional weight they carried, Nathan ventured into the forest as twilight fell, the shadows of the towering pines stretching long and ominous. He walked the same paths Isabella was said to have walked, his digital recorder and camera in hand, ready to capture any sign of the spectral presence. As the forest grew darker, a soft glow appeared through the trees. Nathan followed it, his heart pounding with a mix of anticipation and the chill of the unknown. The glow intensified, coalescing into the figure of a woman in a shimmering green gown. Her face was sorrowful yet serene, and she seemed anchored to a specific spot by an unseen force. Isabella, Nathan called softly, not wanting to startle her. The figure paused, turning her gaze towards him. Her eyes were a deep, mournful green, echoing the forest itself. "Who calls me from my sorrow?" she asked, her voice a whisper like the wind through leaves. "My name is Nathan," he replied. "I've come to listen, to help if I can. What binds you to this forest?" Isabella's spectral form hovered closer, her transparency flickering with the dim light. "My son," she murmured, "lost to these woods, never found. My heart remains with him. Searching, always searching." Moved by her tale, Nathan promised to help. He returned to the village to delve into old records, piecing together the tragic story of Isabella's young son who had disappeared while playing near the forest edge. No trace of him had ever been found, despite extensive searches. Convinced that finding some clue to her son's fate might bring Isabella peace, Nathan organized a new search of the area she was known to haunt, enlisting the help of local volunteers. They combed the forest, and after several days, they discovered a small weathered toy, a wooden horse, partially buried under a fallen log near an old, forgotten well. With the toy in hand, Nathan returned to Isabella's haunt as dusk enveloped the forest once again. He held out the toy to her glowing figure. "Is this your son's?" he asked gently. Recognition and profound sorrow passed over Isabella's face. She reached out, her hand passing through the toy as if through air, but her expression softened. "Yes," she whispered. "He loved it so. I can feel him, his laughter, his joy. Thank you." As she spoke, the air around them grew warmer, the oppressive sorrow lifting. Isabella's form began to fade, a smile gracing her lips, her eyes conveying deep gratitude. "I can rest now. With him," she said as her figure dissipated completely, leaving behind the glowing toy and a sense of peace. Nathan left the toy by the old well, marking the spot with a small cairn. He returned to the village, where he shared the story of his encounter and the discovery with the villagers. Together, they erected a memorial for Isabella and her son in the village square, bringing closure not only to a wandering spirit, but also to a community haunted by its past. As Nathan left Thornfield, the weight of many such unresolved spirits on his shoulders felt a little lighter. His journey continued, driven by the belief that every lost soul had a story desperate to be told, each one a step closer to understanding the vast tapestry of human and spiritual connection. He knew his work was far from over, and as he drove towards the next destination, he was ready for whatever mysteries awaited. Nathan's journey took him next to the sun-baked hills of Sable Creek, a small town nestled in the arid landscapes of the Southwest, famous for its vibrant sunsets and a hauntingly beautiful ghost town. Here, the legend of the Phantom Miner persisted, a tale about an old prospector named Silas who was said to still roam the abandoned mines, protecting a hidden vein of gold he discovered just before his untimely death. Upon arriving in Sable Creek, Nathan was struck by the stark beauty of the desert, the rusty earth tones contrasting sharply with the brilliant blue sky. He visited the local museum to gather information. Learning that Silas had been a reclusive and fiercely protective miner, who supposedly struck a rich vein but died under mysterious circumstances before he could claim his fortune. Ever since, locals and treasure hunters alike reported seeing his spirit, often accompanied by the sounds of pickaxes and ghostly lantern lights within the old mines. Intrigued and undeterred, Nathan set out to explore the abandoned mining district at dusk, when the shadows grew long and the desert air cooled. He trekked through the rugged terrain to the mouth of the most frequently mentioned mine in the tales, Old Silas's Shaft. Setting up his equipment, including night vision cameras and EVP, electronic voice phenomenon, recorders, he ventured inside the mine, the air cool and thick with the dust of ages. As night fell, the silence of the desert was palpable, broken only by the occasional distant howl of a coyote. Inside the mine, Nathan felt a distinct drop in temperature and the faint echo of metal against rock. Following these sounds, he descended deeper into the labyrinthine tunnels. Suddenly, a shadow flickered at the edge of his light's reach. Nathan paused, adjusting his camera to focus on the figure. It was then that Silas appeared before him, his apparition clad in miner's garb, complete with a helmet and a pickaxe. His face was weathered, his eyes reflecting a spectral glow. "Who dares to seek Silas's gold?" The phantom boomed, his voice echoing off the mine walls. Nathan, maintaining his composure, replied, "I'm not here for gold, Silas. I'm here to hear your story, to understand why you remain bound to this place." Silas's demeanor shifted slightly, a mix of suspicion and curiosity in his ghostly mind. "I cannot rest while my discovery is claimed by greed," he growled. Nathan nodded, empathizing with the spirit's plight. "Let me help you, Silas. Let's ensure your story and your discovery are respected." Over the next few days, Nathan worked with Silas's spirit, learning about the miner's life and his dream of using the gold to benefit his estranged family. With Silas's guidance, Nathan located the hidden vein of gold. Documenting everything, he contacted the descendants of Silas, who were unaware of their ancestors' discovery. Together with the family and local historians, Nathan arranged for the mine to be safely secured and for the proceeds from the small amount of extracted gold to fund a scholarship in Silas's name for local students pursuing geology and mining. On the night the agreement was signed, Nathan returned to the mine, where Silas appeared once more. This time, the phantom's expression was one of relief and gratitude. "Thank you, stranger, for giving me peace and purpose," Silas said before fading away, his spirit released by the assurance that his discovery would benefit future generations rather than fuel further greed. As Nathan left Sable Creek, the first light of dawn painted the desert sky in hues of gold and crimson. He felt a profound connection to the many lives he had touched, both living and spectral. Each resolved haunting not only brought peace to restless spirits, but also healed the living, mending old wounds and fostering new beginnings. His resolve strengthened, Nathan continued on his journey, ever ready to bridge the gap between past and present, spirit and soul. Each destination offered new challenges, but also new opportunities to make a meaningful impact, one ghost story at a time. Driving away from Sable Creek, Nathan's route took him northward to the misty reaches of Pine Haven, a coastal town wrapped in the folklore of sea spirits and ancient lore. Here, the story of the Mist Walker, a spectral figure said to guide lost sailors back to shore, had captured the town's imagination and fear for generations. Arriving in Pine Haven during the gray twilight of early fall, Nathan was greeted by the sight of fog rolling in from the sea, enveloping the town in a soft, damp cloak. The locals, rugged and reserved, shared their tales with a mix of reverence and dread. The Mist Walker, they said, was the spirit of a lighthouse keeper named Old Tom, who perished in a storm while trying to save a ship in distress. Ever since, his ghost was occasionally seen on foggy nights, his lantern glowing dimly as he roamed the cliffs and shores. Intrigued by this benevolent yet melancholic apparition, Nathan sought permission to spend a few nights at the old lighthouse, now automated and rarely visited except by the occasional maintenance crew. With his gear set up, he waited as the sun dipped below the horizon. and the fog thickened, watching the beam of the lighthouse cut a steady path through the gloom. As midnight approached, Nathan ventured outside, the sea spray mingling with the damp air, creating a surreal, otherworldly atmosphere. That's when he first glimpsed the glow of a faint light moving along the shore. Adjusting his equipment, he followed the light, his heart pacing with the rise and fall of the distant waves. The mist walker appeared more as a silhouette against the dense fog, a figure wrapped in an old mariner's coat, a lantern held aloft. As Nathan approached, the figure paused and turned, its face obscured by the mist, but its voice clear and tinged with sadness. "Who walks my path?" the ghost of old Tom inquired, his tone weary yet welcoming. "I'm Nathan," he replied, keeping his voice steady. "I heard your story, Tom. I came to learn more about you, to see if there's any way I can help." Old Tom's lantern swung gently in the breeze, casting eerie shadows. "My duty was to the sea, to the souls it claimed," he said. "I stay to guide them home, lest they wander the shores forever, lost and alone." Moved by Tom's enduring devotion, Nathan asked, "Is there no peace for you then? No light to guide you home as you guide others?" A long silence followed before Tom responded, "Perhaps there is no guide for the likes of me, forever bound to my post, by duty, by choice." Nathan thought deeply, then said, "Let's change that. Let's light a beacon for you, Tom, a symbol of your service and sacrifice. Let this town remember you not just as a ghost, but as a keeper, a guardian." With Tom's blessing, Nathan organized a community event at the lighthouse. He shared old Tom's story, not just as folklore, but as a testament to the human spirit's capacity to care beyond life itself. The town came together to light a ceremonial beacon, a new tradition that would take place each year, honoring both the lost sailors and their steadfast keeper. That night, as the new beacon flared bright against the dark sky, Tom's ghost stood beside Nathan, watching the flames. The light reflected in his translucent eyes, and for a moment, it seemed as if a weight had lifted from his spectral shoulders. "Thank you, Nathan," Tom whispered, his voice fading like the mist at dawn. "Now I too can find my way home." As the ghostly figure of old Tom dissipated into the sea spray air, the townsfolk murmured their thanks, their eyes turned towards the beacon, their hearts warmed by the story of their mist walker. As dawn broke, Nathan packed up, his mission in Pine Haven complete. With each spirit's release, he felt a renewed sense of purpose. His journey wasn't just about chasing shadows. It was about illuminating paths, both for those who had passed and those left behind to remember and to heal. With his compass set on the next town, the next tale, Nathan drove off, the sea's melody a soft accompaniment to his thoughts of past and future wanderings. The road took Nathan next to the rolling hills of Eldridge Valley, a place steeped in history and the echo of Civil War battles long past. Here, the ghost of a soldier named Captain Elias Ford was said to haunt the old battlefield, his spirit unable to rest due to a letter he never delivered, a message of love and forgiveness from a dying friend to his estranged family. Upon arriving, Nathan met with the local historical society to gather information about the battle and the legend of Captain Ford. Armed with maps of the old battlefield and diaries from other soldiers who had served with Elias, Nathan set out to the site, now a preserved historical park, to spend the night under the stars and perhaps encounter the restless spirit. As twilight deepened, the peaceful green fields of Eldridge Valley took on a somber tone. Setting up his camp near the remains of an old field hospital, Nathan waited, his recorder and camera at the ready. The air grew cooler as darkness settled, and the faint sounds of the night were gradually overtaken by a distant drumming, like the heartbeat of the valley echoing through time. Around midnight, a mist began to form along the ground, swirling and thickening until it took the shape of a man in a faded Union uniform. The figure of Captain Ford appeared before Nathan, his face marked by the trials of battle and the burden of his unresolved duty. "Who summons me from my rest?" the ghost asked, his voice a mix of authority and weariness. "I'm Nathan," he replied calmly, showing no fear. "I've read about your story, Captain Ford, about the letter you carry. I'm here to help you deliver it, if I can." The spirit of Elias Ford seemed to study Nathan for a moment before nodding slowly, the lines of his face softening. "The letter," he murmured, reaching into his coat and pulling out a tattered, faded envelope. "It's for a family that deserved a farewell their son could never give. I failed him. I failed them." Nathan took a careful step closer. "Maybe it's not too late. Let's find them together." With the ghost's guidance, Nathan embarked on a journey to trace the family of the young soldier who had written the letter. Research through old military records and genealogical databases led him to a small town not far from Eldridge Valley. There, he discovered descendants of the soldier's family still living in the area. Nathan arranged to meet with the family, sharing the story of Captain Ford and the final message meant for their ancestors. The family, moved by the revelation and the closure it brought, agreed to come to the battlefield to formally receive the letter and acknowledge Captain Ford's duty. On a crisp morning, with the descendants gathered on the old battlefield, Nathan handed the letter to them, watched by the spectral presence of Elias Ford. As the family read the heartfelt words aloud, a profound peace seemed to settle over the field, the morning sun breaking through the clouds, casting light over them all. "Thank you," Captain Ford's ghost said, his voice barely a whisper as he looked at Nathan and the family. "My duty is fulfilled, and my soul is at ease." With those final words, the spirit of Elias Ford saluted, a gesture of respect and farewell, before fading into the light of the new day, his form dissolving like mist under the sun. The family thanked Nathan for his dedication and the peace he had brought to both the living and the dead. As he packed up his equipment, ready to leave Eldridge Valley, he felt the weight of history and the power of reconciliation more profoundly than ever. Nathan's journey continued, driven by stories of spectral hauntings and human hearts yearning for resolution. Each spirit's story was a lesson in history's depths, the resilience of the human spirit, and the healing that could come from bringing long-forgotten truths into the light. As he drove toward the next town, Nathan knew his calling was not just an occupation, but a mission to mend the torn fabric of the past, helping spirits and their families find the peace they deserved. I wasn't always an insomniac. It started subtly, almost imperceptibly, like the first few drops of rain before a storm. My nights, once cocoons of blissful darkness, gradually became restless marathons of thought and wakefulness. Initially, it was the glare of my computer screen and the endless scrolling on my phone that nudged my bedtime later and later. The digital world was a rabbit hole, and I, Alice, tumbling deeper each night. As the weeks morphed into months, my ability to fall asleep at a reasonable hour vanished. Coffee became both a morning necessity and an evening routine, a futile attempt to balance my waning energy. Living alone in my small apartment on the outskirts of the city offered solitude but little peace. That's when I first noticed him, the old man. Every night at exactly 3:00 a.m., he appeared outside my window, standing beneath the dim glow of the street lamp, his gaze fixed on the vacant lot across the street. He was always there, regardless of the weather. Rain slicking his gray hair to his skull, snow settling on the shoulders of his dark coat, the summer heat making his shirt stick to his back. My initial curiosity about his presence quickly spiraled into an obsession. Who was he? What was he looking at? Why there? And why always at 3:00 a.m.? Night after night, I watched him from behind my curtains, my sleep-deprived brain cataloging his every move, or rather, his lack of them. One evening, driven by a mix of insomnia-fueled boldness and genuine concern, I decided to confront him. As I approached, the chill of the night air prickled my skin, but it was the intensity of his gaze, fixed on something unseen in the darkness of the lot, that sent shivers down my spine. He didn't react to my approach, his eyes never acknowledging my presence. It was as if I was the ghost, not him. "Excuse me," I called out, my voice faltering slightly. "Can I help you? Are you lost?" He turned slowly, his movements stiff, as if unaccustomed to motion. His eyes, when they met mine, were hollow, as though light and life had long since fled from them. "Can't find them," he murmured, his voice a whisper lost to the wind. "Can't ever find them." Puzzled and unnerved, I stepped back, my heart pounding a frantic beat. "Who are you looking for?" He turned away without another word, resuming his silent vigil. Confused and chilled to the bone, I retreated to my apartment, the image of his tormented eyes haunting me. Over the following nights, his presence became an eerie constant in my life. His behavior began to change subtly. A gradual tilting of his head, his hands no longer tucked safely in his pockets but hanging limply at his sides. These alterations in his routine unnerved me more than his initial appearances. Then came the night he didn't show up. At first, I felt a wave of relief. Perhaps the strange ordeal was over. But as the clock ticked past 3:10, then 3:20, an inexplicable fear gripped me. Compelled by a force I didn't understand, I found myself outside, standing at the very spot he occupied each night. The air around me grew cold, colder than any winter night should be, and the silence was suffocating. Turning back towards my apartment, my breath caught in my throat. There, inside, through my own window, I saw him. He stood in my living room, his body angled in unnatural ways, his face twisted in an expression of profound sorrow and loss. Paralyzed by fear, I watched as he reached out towards me with a hand that seemed more spectral than flesh. The streetlight flickered ominously overhead, and his voice, a mere breath, filled the night. "Help me," he pleaded. Overcome by terror, I turned and fled, not stopping, until I reached the safety of a nearby diner bustling with the early risers of the morning. As I sat there, sipping a hot coffee, the adrenaline slowly ebbing from my veins, I realized my nights of insomnia were far more than mere sleep disturbances. I was entangled in something deeper, something that tied this tormented soul to the living world, to my apartment, to me. I knew then that I had to leave, to escape the haunting that my home had become. But as I prepared to move, the fear of seeing him again, of hearing his desperate pleas, followed me. Even now, in a new town, a new apartment, as I lay awake at night, I wonder if I truly escaped, or if part of him, that sad, lost part, followed me. And in the darkest hours, just before dawn, I swear I can feel his presence, a chill in the air, a whisper in the silence, a reminder that some encounters are never truly over. In my new environment, the echoes of the old man's despair seemed to permeate the walls of my freshly rented apartment. Despite the change of scenery, the haunting experience in my previous home had left an indelible mark on my psyche. Every shadow cast by the moonlight, every creak of the settling building, heightened my sense of dread as the clock neared 3:00 a.m. each night. Determined to break the cycle of fear and sleepless nights, I resolved to return to my old city and uncover the truth behind the old man's appearances. I needed closure, an understanding that could perhaps grant both of us peace. Upon my return, I first visited the local library, diving into historical records, old newspapers and archives, seeking any clue that might shed light on the identity of the mysterious figure and his cryptic message. Hours turned into days as I sifted through microfiche and dusty tomes. Finally, I stumbled upon an old map that marked a long-demolished orphanage on the very spot of the empty lot the old man had stared at so intently. Intrigued, I delved deeper into the history of the orphanage and discovered it had burned down under mysterious circumstances in the late 1950s, tragically claiming the lives of several children. Among the names of the deceased, I found a possible link: a caretaker who had vanished shortly before the fire and was never accounted for. His description matched that of the old man. With this information, I visited the site again. Standing in the chilly night air, I called out to him, hoping for a response. "I know about the fire, about the children. Were you trying to save them? Is that why you're still here?" As if summoned by my words, a chill wind stirred the leaves around me, and the old man's form materialized. His expression was tormented, more pronounced than ever. "Yes," he whispered, his voice broken by sorrow. "My children, I couldn't save them. I failed them. And here I must stay, bound by my regret and their memories." The depth of his sorrow was palpable, and I felt a surge of empathy for his tragic, endless vigil. "Let them know you tried," I suggested softly. "Maybe they're waiting for you too. Let's help them move on together." That night, under the pale glow of the streetlight, I conducted a small ritual of remembrance and release, using candles, flowers, and an old photograph of the orphanage I had found. I read out the names of the lost children, honoring their memories, telling them it was time to move on, to find peace. As the candles flickered, the atmosphere shifted. The air felt lighter, and the old man's form began to shimmer with a soft light. "Thank you," he murmured, a tear tracing down his ethereal cheek. "I can feel them leaving, forgiving, and now so can I." With a final, peaceful glance at me, he faded away, the night air reclaiming the space where he had stood. The haunting that had followed me, the weight of unresolved spirits, seemed to dissipate with his departure. Returning to my new home, the difference was immediate. The oppressive air of anticipation as the clock neared 3 a.m. had lifted. For the first time in months, I slept through the night, a deep, untroubled sleep that felt both healing and redemptive. From then on, my life took on a new rhythm, free from the nightly hauntings and filled instead with a sense of completion. However, the experience left me with a profound respect for the mysteries that lingered just beyond the veil of the seen world, and a deep compassion for those spirits caught between realms. I knew my encounter with the old man wouldn't be my last with the supernatural, but now I approached each with a renewed sense of purpose, to listen, to understand, and to aid in the passage from this world to the next, wherever and whenever it might be needed. Emboldened by his recent success and the peace it brought, Nathan found himself more attuned to the whispers of the unseen. His work, once a pursuit of curiosity, had morphed into a calling, a mission to bridge the gaps between lost souls and the realm of the living. The word of his abilities spread, and soon, Nathan was contacted by people from various places, each with their own stories of hauntings and spectral appearances. One such call led him to the town of Maple Grove, where the local inn was reputed to be haunted by the spirit of a woman named Clara, who had owned the inn during the early 1900s. According to the current innkeeper, guests frequently reported seeing her figure pacing the hallways at night, her expression one of worry and distress. Upon arriving at Maple Grove, Nathan felt a chill different from the usual preternatural cold associated with hauntings. It was a sharp, piercing sensation that hinted at a deep, unresolved anguish. As he settled into one of the rooms of the old inn, he prepared himself for the night ahead, setting up his equipment with practiced ease. That night, as the clock struck midnight, the temperature in the room dropped significantly, and the faint sound of footsteps echoed down the hallway. Nathan stepped out into the corridor, his camera recording, and soon he saw her, Clara, her figure faint but unmistakably anguished as she moved restlessly from one room to another. "Clara," Nathan called gently, not wanting to startle her. "My name is Nathan. I'm here to help you, if I can." At the sound of her name, Clara stopped, turning slowly to face him. Her eyes, full of sorrow, met his. "My daughter," she whispered, her voice heavy with regret. "I need to find my daughter." Moved by her plea, Nathan asked, "What happened to your daughter, Clara?" "I lost her years ago. She left after an argument and never returned. I've been waiting, hoping she would come back," Clara explained, her voice breaking with each word. Determined to bring peace to Clara, Nathan began researching the next day, diving into local archives and records, tracking down any leads on Clara's family. His investigation led him to discover that Clara's daughter had moved to a neighboring state and had passed away many years ago, leaving behind descendants. Contacting the family, Nathan learned more about Clara's daughter's life and obtained a letter she had written but never sent to her mother, expressing her desire to reconcile. Nathan returned to the inn with the letter, hopeful that it might provide the closure Clara needed. That evening, he read the letter aloud to Clara's spirit, who listened with a growing sense of peace. As the words of her daughter's forgiveness filled the air, Clara's spectral form began to glow softly, her features relaxing, the worry lines smoothing away. "Thank you," she said, her voice now calm and free of pain. "I can rest now, knowing she forgave me." With a final, grateful look, Clara faded from sight, her spirit released from the decades of waiting and worry that had bound her to the inn. As Nathan packed up his equipment, feeling the weight of Clara's relief as much as his own, he realized how much his role had evolved. He was no longer merely a ghost hunter. He was a conduit for healing, a mediator who helped mend the broken connections between the living and the dead. Each case left a mark on him, teaching him more about the complexities of human emotions and the unresolved tensions that can tether a spirit to the physical world. And as he left Maple Grove, his heart was both heavy and hopeful. The road next led Nathan to the quiet town of Eldridge, nestled between rolling hills and dense forests. It was here that he heard about the Painter of Eldridge, a spirit rumored to haunt the old Gibbons estate, now an abandoned mansion that had once been the heart of the town's cultural life. The painter, Eleanor Gibbons, was a renowned artist of her time, whose masterpieces were said to still adorn the mansion's decaying walls, her spirit lingering to protect her life's work from decay and vandalism. As Nathan drove through Eldridge's misty streets, the sense of a once thriving art community was palpable, its current silence a stark contrast to its vibrant past. Arriving at the Gibbons estate, the mansion stood as a monument to forgotten grandeur, its once majestic facade now weathered by time and neglect. Nathan set up his temporary base inside the main gallery of the mansion, where faded canvases still clung to the walls, their colors dim but defiant in the face of abandonment. As dusk fell, the air inside the mansion grew thick with the scent of old paint and musty canvas, a perfect setting for the apparition of Eleanor to make her presence known. It wasn't long before Nathan felt a shift in the atmosphere. A gentle brush of air moved across his neck, as if someone had passed by him quietly. Turning quickly, he caught a glimpse of Eleanor's figure retreating into the shadows of her studio. Her form was graceful, draped in a painter's smock, her hands stained with remnants of paint that seemed as fresh as if she had just put down her brush. "Eleanor Gibbons," Nathan called out softly, not wanting to startle her. "I'm Nathan. I've come to see your art, to understand why you remain." Her voice floated back to him, a whisper intermingled with a sigh. "My work, my soul's expression, unfinished, unseen. They will forget," she murmured, her tone mournful yet tinged with defiance. Nathan approached her studio cautiously, finding sketches and paintings that captured scenes of Eldridge's landscapes and portraits of its people, a visual history of the town and its essence. "Your art is beautiful, Eleanor. It deserves to be seen, remembered, not forgotten." Motivated by a deep respect for her legacy, Nathan organized an exhibition of Eleanor's remaining works in collaboration with the local historical society. He spent days restoring the paintings, documenting each piece, and preparing them for display. The exhibition opened to the public with the town's current residents and art lovers from nearby areas in attendance. As people admired Eleanor's work, Nathan felt the energy in the mansion shift from sorrowful to celebratory, the air filling with a murmur of appreciation and awe. That night, as Nathan walked through the gallery, he felt Eleanor's presence beside him, her spirit calmer and somehow lighter. "Thank you," she said, her voice no longer just a whisper but clear and vibrant. "I can rest, knowing my life's work will live on." With those words, her figure slowly dissipated, her departure marked by a final stroke of light across a canvas, like a sunset captured in paint. The gallery, now filled with life and light, stood as a testament to her talent and passion. As Nathan packed up his gear, ready to leave the revitalized Gibbons estate, He felt a profound satisfaction in having helped not just a tormented spirit, but an entire community reconnect with its artistic roots. Each engagement deepened his appreciation for the nuanced stories of the spirits he encountered, each one unique yet universally bound by the need for recognition and remembrance. Driving away from Eldridge, Nathan reflected on the countless other stories waiting to be told, each one a hidden gem obscured by the shadows of oblivion. His journey continued, driven by the ever-present call to unveil these stories, bridging past and present with each spirit's piece he helped achieve. As the autumn leaves began to turn, signaling the end of another cycle in nature, Nathan's travels brought him to the quaint town of Riverton, where the legend of the silent ferryman beckoned him with whispers of an old ghost haunting the banks of the Willow River. According to local lore, the ferryman was once a lifeline for the townspeople, shuttling them across the river before the bridge was built. His sudden disappearance one foggy night left the town mystified, and ever since, on particularly misty evenings, some claim to see a figure in a boat, silently rowing along the old ferry path. Intrigued by this story intertwined with the community's history, Nathan arrived in Riverton with a sense of anticipation. He spent his first few days talking to the locals, gathering their stories, and exploring the riverbanks. The foggy evenings gave the river an eerie, otherworldly appearance, the perfect ambience for a ghostly rower to make an appearance. Equipped with his camera and audio equipment, Nathan set up near the old wooden dock that had served the ferryman. As the mist descended upon the river, cloaking the water in a thick, ghostly veil, Nathan's anticipation grew. Hours passed with only the sound of the river lapping against the shore and the distant calls of nocturnal animals. Then, just as the town clock struck midnight, a figure materialized in the midst of the fog, aboard an old, weathered rowboat. The silent ferryman, a spectral entity clad in an old, tattered coat and a wide-brimmed hat, obscured his face. He rowed silently, his movements smooth and practiced, the oars barely making a sound as they dipped into the misty water. "Good evening, ferryman," Nathan called out, his voice calm and respectful. "I've heard much about you. I'm here to learn your story, why you remain tied to this river." The figure paused, turning slowly toward Nathan. Though his face remained hidden under the shadow of his hat, Nathan sensed the ferryman's attention was entirely on him. A low, hollow voice emerged from the figure. "I wait for one who promised to return. My duty is not yet done." Moved by the ferryman's endless wait, Nathan asked, "Who are you waiting for?" "A young man, my son, who left to seek his fortune across the river," the ferryman replied, his voice filled with a timeless ache. "He promised to return before my time was up. I vowed not to leave my post until I could pass my duty on to him." Determined to help, Nathan researched the ferryman's story. Delving into local archives and records, he discovered that the ferryman's son had indeed left Riverton, only to perish in a distant town without ever sending word back home. With this sorrowful knowledge, Nathan returned to the riverbank the following night, bringing with him a letter he had found, written by the son to his father, but never sent, expressing his intention to return home soon. Nathan read the letter aloud to the ferryman, each word stirring the fog around them. As the letter ended, a profound silence settled over the river. Then the ferryman's voice, now less hollow, more at peace, whispered, "Thank you. I can now rest, knowing he remembered me to the end." The figure slowly faded into the mist, the sound of the rowing ceasing, leaving behind a calm stillness on the river. Nathan stood by the water for a long time, reflecting on the power of unresolved farewells and the peace that truth could bring, even after decades. As dawn broke, painting the sky with hues of pink and gold, Nathan felt a renewed sense of purpose. His journey wasn't just about exploring hauntings. It was about mending the unseen threads of love and duty that bound the living and the dead. With each spirit's release, Nathan deepened his understanding of the spectral world and its intertwined connection with human emotions and history. His work, far from done, promised more journeys into the heart of human and ghostly realms, each story a step further into understanding the complex tapestry of existence that connected us all. As Nathan left Riverton, his mind lingered on the poignant resolution of the silent ferryman's story. The healing that came from revealing the truth not only released the spirit, but also enriched the community's connection to their own history. Such encounters reinforced Nathan's belief in his work's profound necessity, often overshadowing the solitude his unique path entailed. His next destination was the historic town of Cedar Bluffs, where the legend of the Midnight Librarian intrigued him. According to the locals, an apparition was often seen wandering through the aisles of the old public library, sometimes organizing books late into the night, as if preparing for patrons who would never come. The spirit was said to be that of Margaret Dwyer, the town's first librarian, who reportedly loved her job so much that not even death could keep her away from her beloved books. Arriving in Cedar Bluffs, Nathan was greeted by an autumnal chill that made the evenings brisk and the mornings shrouded in a fine mist. The old library, a Victorian-era building with Gothic arches and a towering clock that still chimed every hour, stood as a beacon of history amidst the modern age encroaching upon the town. Nathan arranged to spend several nights inside the library with the permission of the current staff, who were curious and somewhat relieved to possibly understand and appease the spirit that seemed only to want to keep the library in order. Settling in after hours, Nathan's presence in the library was accompanied by a palpable sense of anticipation. As the clock struck midnight, the soft sound of footsteps echoed across the wooden floors, accompanied by the faint rustle of pages being turned. Sure enough, the spectral figure of Margaret Dwyer appeared, her form dressed in the early 20th century garb of a librarian, her eyes scanning the shelves with a discernible affection. "Good evening, Margaret," Nathan spoke softly, stepping into the dim light of the reading lamps. "My name is Nathan. I'm here to learn about your continued guardianship of this place." Margaret paused, turning towards him. Her face, though translucent, was marked by an expression of mild surprise and curiosity. "I have books to tend to," she said, her voice echoing slightly off the stacks. "They need care, and there's no one else." "I understand your dedication," Nathan replied, "but perhaps we can find a way to let you rest, knowing the library continues in good hands." Margaret seemed to consider his words, her gaze softening. "I devoted my life to these books, to this community. I fear what will become of this place without someone to oversee it." Moved by her commitment, Nathan proposed a solution. "Let's ensure the community knows about your dedication. We could start a program in your honor, encouraging volunteers to care for the library, continuing your legacy." With Margaret's reluctant but hopeful agreement, Nathan worked with the library staff to initiate the Margaret Dwyer Legacy Project, which invited local book lovers to participate in maintaining and organizing the library. The project was met with enthusiastic response, and soon the library buzzed with volunteers, their efforts ensuring the upkeep of the collection and the building. On the night the project was launched, Nathan saw Margaret once more. This time, her smile was broad, her eyes gleaming with approval. "Thank you, Nathan," she said, her form beginning to fade into the rows of books. "I can see now that my beloved library will thrive." With a final glance around her cherished library, Margaret's spirit disappeared, leaving behind a legacy of communal care and literary passion. As Nathan packed up his belongings from the library, he felt a sense of accomplishment and contentment. Each ghostly encounter taught him more about the human heart and spirit, reinforcing his role as a bridge between the past and the present, the seen and the unseen. His journey continued, drawn ever onward by the mysteries of the spirit world, each resolution adding layers to his understanding of life, death, and the timeless bonds that connect us all. After his time in Cedar Bluffs, Nathan's sense of purpose was invigorated, reinforcing his commitment to resolving the mysteries that tied spirits to the earthly realm. The successful establishment of the Margaret Dwyer Legacy Project not only provided closure for a lingering spirit, but also demonstrated the positive impact these resolutions could have on living communities. Nathan's next call came from the misty coasts of Whitmore Bay, where tales of a spectral ship appeared with the full moon, its ghostly crew doomed to reenact their final hours before a storm sank their vessel centuries ago. Locals spoke of eerie chants and creaking timbers echoing across the bay on moonlit nights, an ominous reminder of the ship's tragic fate. Upon arrival in Whitmore Bay, Nathan was drawn immediately to the rugged beauty of the coastline, the crash of the waves against the cliffs offering a somber backdrop for the spectral ship's legend. He spent the first few nights observing from the cliffs, camera and audio equipment at the ready, documenting the environmental conditions that might trigger the apparition. As anticipated on the night of the full moon, the air grew unnaturally cold, and a thick fog rolled in from the sea. It was then that the ghostly ship materialized in the distance, its sails torn and fluttering in the non-existent wind. The silhouettes of the crew could be seen moving about the deck, engaged in a silent struggle against their inevitable fate. With a respectful approach, Nathan called out to the ship, his voice carrying over the water. "I wish to understand your story, to help you find peace, if you are willing." To his surprise, the activity on the ship paused, and a figure separated from the rest of the crew to stand at the bow. The captain, a tall figure clad in a weather-beaten coat, raised his hand as if in greeting, or perhaps acknowledgement. His voice, when he spoke, was the hollow echo of the sea's depths. "We are bound to repeat our final voyage, unable to change our fate or warn our past selves of the impending doom." Nathan listened, moved by the captain's words, and proposed a plan. "Let me record your story, share it with those who dwell on the land. Maybe, by acknowledging your tragedy and remembering you, we can help lift the curse that binds you." Over several nights, Nathan gathered the tales of the ship's crew, each account adding a layer to the tragedy and painting a vivid picture of their doomed voyage. He compiled these stories into a historical document, which he shared with the local historical society and a maritime museum interested in the preservation of nautical folklore. The museum agreed to hold an exhibition dedicated to the ghost ship, featuring Nathan's recordings and a detailed history of the ship's voyages and the storm that led to its sinking. The exhibit also included a memorial plaque bearing the names of the crew, acknowledging their plight and their contributions to the maritime heritage of Whitmore Bay. On the night the exhibit opened, Nathan returned to the cliffside. This time, as the ship appeared once more, its presence seemed less tormented, the movements of the crew less frantic. The captain appeared at the bow again, his voice carrying across the water, now with a note of release. "Thank you, stranger. We sail now into the unknown, no longer forgotten, our story told." With a final nod, the ship slowly faded into the fog, disappearing as if it had never been, leaving behind a calm sea and a clear sky. The curse, it seemed, was broken, the crew released by the power of remembrance and acknowledgement. As Nathan packed away his equipment, he felt a profound connection to the past and its ongoing influence on the present. Each spirit's story was a testament to the enduring human spirit, and each resolution reinforced his belief in his work's importance. With his heart full and his resolve strong, Nathan continued his journey, ever responsive to the next call, the next story, ready to aid those who waited in the shadow of obscurity, hoping for someone to listen and help them find peace. Driven by his recent success in Whitmore Bay, Nathan's resolve to help spirits find peace grew stronger. As autumn ushered in its palette of red and gold, he received an intriguing letter from the town of Everwood, located in the heart of an ancient forest known for its supernatural occurrences. The letter spoke of the Whispering Woods, where locals had long reported hearing voices and seeing lights that seemed to beckon from within the deep, unexplored parts of the forest. Eager to explore this phenomenon, Nathan set off for Everwood, a town as quaint as it was enigmatic, its community tightly knit and deeply respectful of the forest's history and mysteries. Upon arrival, he was greeted with a mix of curiosity and relief. Curiosity about what he might uncover and relief that someone with his reputation was taking an interest in their legendary woods. Nathan met with several townsfolk who shared their personal encounters with the Whispering Woods. Each account varied slightly. Some spoke of voices calling their names. Others recounted seeing glimpses of figures flitting between the trees, and a few described a feeling of overwhelming sadness that washed over them as they neared certain parts of the forest. Intrigued by these accounts, Nathan ventured into the forest equipped with his usual array of recording devices. The forest was thick and ancient, its trees towering and leaves whispering secrets of centuries past. As night fell and the moon cast eerie shadows through the thick foliage, the air grew still, and a palpable sense of expectancy filled the atmosphere. Nathan walked deeper into the forest, following the subtle sounds that seemed to guide him. It wasn't long before the soft murmuring voices began, ethereal and almost melodic. They seemed to emanate from all around him, yet when he turned to pinpoint their sources, the sounds moved, always just out of clear sight. Setting up his equipment in a small clearing, Nathan reached out into the night. "I am here to listen," he announced into the darkness. "I wish to understand your stories, to help if I can." Gradually, the whispers coalesced into more discernible voices. They spoke of old sorrows, of lives cut short by tragedy in the forest, lost wanderers, forgotten outcasts, and victims of ancient conflicts. As he listened, Nathan realized these spirits were not malevolent. They were merely lost, their stories untold, their presences unacknowledged. Compelled to bring peace to these restless souls, Nathan spent several nights documenting each story, each name. With the help of the local historical society, he created a memorial within the town, dedicated to those who had perished or suffered in the forest. The memorial featured a path with stones engraved with the names he had collected, each one a testament to a life that had once been. On the night of the memorial's unveiling, the townspeople gathered for a candlelit vigil, walking the path and reading the names aloud. As they did, the atmosphere in the forest shifted. The heavy, sorrowful air lifted, replaced by a sense of peace and closure. Standing at the edge of the clearing, Nathan felt the spirits of the forest move around him, their whispers now soft and grateful. "Thank you," they seemed to say, their voices fading into the rustle of the leaves. One by one, the lights that had flitted between the trees dimmed, the forest settling into a serene quiet. As Nathan left Everwood, the first light of dawn was breaking over the horizon, casting a gentle glow through the trees. The experience had deepened his understanding of the spiritual connections that bind us to places and histories, reinforcing his commitment to his work. With each spirit helped and each story honored, Nathan continued on his path, driven by a profound respect for the unseen and an unwavering dedication to bringing peace to those who dwelled in the shadows. His journey was far from over, and he knew that wherever the road took him next, there would be new mysteries to unravel and more spirits waiting for someone to hear their stories. As the leaves began to fall, heralding the approach of winter, Nathan's next destination drew him to the snowy peaks of the Whitetail Mountains, where an isolated community was reportedly haunted by the Snow Walker, a spectral figure seen wandering the snowy landscape in the dead of winter. The locals believed it was the spirit of a mountaineer who had perished in a blizzard decades ago, still searching for the cabin he never reached. Upon arriving in the small mountain town nestled at the foot of the Whitetail Mountains, Nathan was struck by the stark beauty of the snow-covered landscape, the silence of the falling snow adding an otherworldly quality to the haunting tale he was about to investigate. The townsfolk were warm despite the chill in the air, each one eager to share their own encounters with the Snow Walker, whose appearances had become a wintertime legend in the community. Nathan spent the first few days acclimating to the cold and gathering as much information as he could from the locals and historical records kept at the town hall. He learned that the mountaineer, named Thomas Caldwell, was a beloved figure in the town, known for his adventurous spirit and love for the mountains. His untimely death had left a void in the community, and his spirit seemed unable to rest, forever trying to find his way home. Equipped with thermal imaging cameras and recording devices, Nathan ventured into the mountains, following the path Thomas was believed to have taken on that fateful day. The snow crunched underfoot, the crisp air biting at his face as he made his way deeper into the wilderness. As night fell and the temperature dropped further, Nathan set up camp near an old, abandoned cabin that matched the description of Thomas's intended destination. It was here, the locals had said, that the snow walker was most often seen. Nathan waited, his breath forming clouds of vapor in the frigid air. His cameras pointed at the trail leading to the cabin. Hours into the night, a figure emerged from the falling snow, the outline barely visible and eerily quiet. The figure walked with a purposeful stride, stopping a few feet away from Nathan. Through the thermal camera, Nathan could see the cold outline of a man, his features indistinct but unmistakably human. Thomas Caldwell. Nathan called out into the wind. "I'm Nathan. I've come to help you find your way." The figure paused, turning towards Nathan's voice. "I'm lost," it replied, the voice hollow and filled with a chilling despair. "I can't find the cabin. I can't find my way home." Understanding the spirit's confusion and eternal quest, Nathan gestured towards the cabin, visible behind him through the snow. "You've reached your destination, Thomas. This is the cabin you were looking for." Slowly, the figure approached the cabin, its steps uncertain. As it reached the doorway, Nathan spoke again. "It's time for you to rest, Thomas. You're home now." The figure stood in the doorway, looking back at Nathan before stepping inside. As it did, the air seemed to shift, the oppressive chill lifting slightly. The figure faded from view, leaving the night silent once more. Nathan stayed until dawn, watching the cabin and the surrounding snowscape turn golden with the morning light. He felt a profound peace knowing that Thomas's spirit had finally found its way home. Returning to the town, Nathan shared the news with the community, who were relieved and grateful that their beloved mountaineer was at rest. They thanked Nathan for his compassion and dedication, and he left the Whitetail Mountains feeling that he had not only helped a lost soul, but also brought closure to an entire community. As Nathan drove away from the mountains, the sun rising behind him, he reflected on the journey ahead. Each spirit's story was a reminder of the delicate balance between life and the afterlife, and his role in navigating these realms continued to evolve. With every spirit helped and every mystery unraveled, Nathan felt more connected to the unseen world. Rejuvenated by his success in the Whitetail Mountains, Nathan felt a renewed sense of purpose as he traveled to his next destination, the historical city of Marston. Here, the haunting tale of the Midnight Rider piqued his interest. The spirit was said to haunt the old Marston Library, eternally searching for a manuscript he never finished in life. The phantom was known to disturb the quiet of the library with the sound of frantic typing and rustling papers late into the night. Marston, with its cobblestone streets and preserved Victorian architecture, seemed untouched by time. The library itself was a grand old building, its spires and stained glass windows casting imposing shadows as dusk fell. Nathan was greeted by the head librarian, Ms. Hawthorne, a keen believer in the paranormal, who was more than willing to assist him in his nocturnal investigation. Over cups of strong tea, Ms. Hawthorne shared the story of Edgar Mallory, a once prominent writer of the early 20th century who frequented the Marston Library. Edgar was reported to have been working on his magnum opus, a novel meant to surpass all his previous works. However, he passed away suddenly, leaving the manuscript incomplete and his spirit seemingly unable to leave the site of his last great endeavor. Armed with historical records of Edgar's life and works, and empathy for the restless spirit, Nathan set up his equipment in the library's main reading room, where Edgar was often seen. As midnight approached, the usual silence of the library was broken by the distinct sound of an old typewriter clacking away and the rustling of paper. Nathan approached the source of the noise, finding an apparition, translucent and flickering, bent over an old typewriter. "Mr. Mallory," Nathan addressed the spirit calmly. "I'm Nathan. I've come to help you finish your work." The typing paused, and the ghostly figure of Edgar Mallory looked up, his expression one of bewilderment and cautious hope. "Can it truly be finished?" he asked, his voice echoing slightly in the vast room. "I believe so," Nathan replied. "But I need to know what your story was about, what you wanted to say." The ghost of Edgar Mallory nodded, and over the course of several nights, he shared the plot and themes of his unfinished novel. Nathan, with the help of Ms. Hawthorne, gathered Edgar's notes and drafts that were archived within the library. Together, they pieced together the unfinished manuscript, filling in gaps with educated guesses and maintaining the integrity of Edgar's vision. Once completed, Nathan arranged for the manuscript to be published under Edgar Mallory's name, with a dedication noting the peculiar history of its completion. The book release at the Marston Library was attended by literature enthusiasts, historians, and locals, all eager to partake in the unique story of its creation. As the book was unveiled, Nathan felt the presence of Edgar Mallory at his side, watching the culmination of his life's work. "Thank you," Edgar's spirit said, visibly more at peace. "Now, I can rest, knowing my story is told." With a final nod to Nathan, Edgar Mallory's figure slowly dissipated, leaving behind a quiet only punctuated by the soft thud of his novel being placed on shelves and in the hands of readers. Nathan left Marston with a copy of the novel tucked under his arm, a tangible result of his efforts to aid those trapped between worlds. Each successful resolution of a haunting reaffirmed his belief in his work's importance, not just to the spirits he helped, but also to the communities affected by these hauntings. As he drove towards the horizon, where the first light of dawn was beginning to paint the sky, Nathan felt. His journey continued, a never-ending path woven with stories of the past, each seeking closure in the present, guided by his unique ability to listen and bring peace to restless souls. The next call that stirred Nathan's interest came from the small coastal town of Seaview, known for its picturesque lighthouse and a less idyllic reputation for the lighthouse keeper's lament. According to local folklore, the ghost of a former keeper named Harold Jensen was seen wandering the top tier of the lighthouse, his lantern glowing faintly in the mist, eternally signaling to ships that no longer needed his guidance. Drawn to the romantic yet sorrowful imagery of the lonely lighthouse against the crashing waves, Nathan arrived in Seaview to a brisk welcome from both the chill sea wind and the curious, albeit somewhat reticent, locals. The lighthouse itself stood on a craggy cliff, its once vital light now automated, its purpose diminished in the age of GPS navigation. Nathan was granted access to the lighthouse for his investigation, and he spent his days researching Harold's life and tenure as a keeper. Harold had been a dedicated keeper, his life tragically cut short by a storm that had also claimed a ship he was unable to save due to equipment failure. The guilt, it seemed, had anchored his spirit to the lighthouse. As night fell, Nathan ascended the spiral staircase to the lantern room, where Harold's apparition was most often reported. With the stormy sea as his backdrop, Nathan set up his cameras and audio recorders, waiting as the atmosphere thickened with the salty tang of sea spray and a palpable sense of anticipation. It wasn't long before a dim light flickered into existence beside the beacon. There, materializing from the mist, was Harold, his figure stooped, his hand clutching the lantern that had failed him in life. "Why do you haunt this place, Harold?" Nathan asked, his voice steady despite the eerie setting. Harold's ghost turned towards him, his eyes filled with an age-old sorrow. "My light was not there when needed. A ship was lost, and with it, lives." His voice trailed off, lost in the sound of the wind. "I know of your tragedy," Nathan responded, "and I know it wasn't your fault. The equipment failed, not the keeper. You did everything you could." Harold's face, lit by the faint glow of his lantern, seemed to waver, as if caught between two worlds. Nathan, sensing the need for a stronger connection, continued, "Let me help you find peace. Let the light shine one last time, for you." With that, Nathan, with prior permission, manually activated the old beacon. The light burst forth, cutting through the night with a potent symbol of guidance and remembrance. "See, Harold, Your light shines brightly now, as it should have. You can let go, knowing that your duty was honorably fulfilled. As the light swept across the waves, Harold's figure appeared to grow less substantial, his expression softening. "Thank you," he murmured, his voice now just a whisper on the wind. "I am ready to leave." With a final nod to Nathan, Harold stepped back, his form blending into the beam of the lighthouse, becoming part of the light that stretched out into the darkness. Slowly, his apparition faded until all that was left was the steady pulse of the beacon, the storm subsiding around them. As dawn approached, Nathan packed away his equipment, feeling a deep satisfaction in helping Harold find his peace. The lighthouse, a symbol of guidance through perilous paths, had provided one last service, not just to the ships at sea, but to its longest-serving keeper. Driving away from Seaview, Nathan reflected on the universality of the need for closure, both in life and beyond. Each spirit's release was a reminder of the enduring impact of compassion and understanding across all existences. His journey, woven with countless stories like Harold's, continued onward, driven by a profound commitment to resolving the echoes of the past, ensuring each was heard and not forgotten in the shadows of history. Nathan's journey soon led him to the quaint town of Greenwood, nestled in the heart of the forest and steeped in a history rich with folklore and mystery. The town was particularly known for the Greenwood Spectre, a ghost said to wander the depths of the surrounding forest, causing a chill to settle over the heart of any who encountered it. According to local lore, this specter was believed to be the spirit of Elizabeth Morrow, a young woman who had disappeared in the woods under mysterious circumstances over a century ago. Intrigued by the blend of natural beauty and supernatural mystery, Nathan arrived in Greenwood during the crisp early days of fall, when the leaves were just beginning to change, painting the landscape in fiery hues. The community, while wary of the specter, was warm and welcoming to Nathan, eager to see if he could uncover the truth behind the long-standing haunting that both fascinated and frightened them. Nathan spent the first few days in Greenwood gathering information from the town's archives and speaking with locals who had encountered the specter. Their stories were varied, but shared a common thread: an overwhelming sense of sorrow and loss that accompanied sightings of the ghostly figure. Equipped with this knowledge, Nathan ventured into the forest as dusk fell, a time when the specter was most often seen. As he walked deeper into the woods, the light fading and the forest sounds growing more pronounced, Nathan felt a palpable sense of being watched. He set up his equipment in a clearing known to be a hotspot for sightings and waited, the air around him growing colder, the normal night sounds of the forest quieting down. It wasn't long before a figure emerged from between the trees, a woman in a long flowing gown, her hair loose and wild, her eyes filled with an indescribable sadness. Nathan approached cautiously, introducing himself and explaining his purpose. "Elizabeth, if you are who I believe you are, I'm here to listen to your story, to help if I can." The specter paused, her gaze piercing through the shadows as she regarded Nathan. After a long moment, she spoke, her voice echoing the whisper of leaves. "I am Elizabeth," she confirmed, her tone melancholic yet tinged with a flicker of hope. "I was lost, taken by the woods. My life ended too soon. I cannot find peace, always searching for the way back home." Moved by her plight, Nathan asked, "What keeps you bound here, Elizabeth? What can I do to help you find your way?" Elizabeth's expression grew more pained. "My family. I was to be married, to start a new life. I want them to know I love them, that I did not leave by choice." Determined to bring peace to her spirit, Nathan returned to the town and delved deeper into historical records, eventually uncovering letters Elizabeth had written to her fiancé. Letters filled with love and excitement for their future together, never delivered. He shared these letters with Elizabeth's descendants, who still lived in the area, revealing the depth of her feelings and her tragic fate. With the family's blessing, Nathan organized a small ceremony in the forest. Elizabeth's letters were read aloud. Her fiancé's ring, which had been kept by the family, was placed on a stone monument that Nathan had erected in the clearing. The ceremony offered words of release and peace, urging Elizabeth to move beyond the earthly bounds that held her. As the ceremony concluded, the atmosphere in the forest lightened, the air warming slightly as the spectral form of Elizabeth appeared one last time. Tears of gratitude shimmered in her ethereal eyes as she looked at Nathan and her family. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice like the wind through the trees. "I can rest now." With a final, peaceful glance around the clearing that had held her bound for so long, Elizabeth's figure dissipated, leaving behind a sense of serenity that permeated the woods. As Nathan packed up his equipment, he felt a deep sense of accomplishment. Each spirit's release not only brought peace to the spectral entity, but also healed generational wounds for the living relatives. With a light heart and a quiet confidence in the impact of his work, Nathan left Greenwood. As Nathan left the serene woods of Greenwood behind, his thoughts lingered on Elizabeth's story, a poignant reminder of the unresolved emotions that could tether spirits to specific places. His experiences had taught him that the spectral realm was intricately tied to human emotions, and each intervention not only released a spirit, but also brought understanding and closure to the community involved. The next call for Nathan's unique skills came from the rural town of Crosswinds, located on the edge of the sprawling Dustin Plains. The town was haunted by the Wandering Widow, a spirit said to traverse the plains at night, appearing in the windows of homes with her mournful gaze and a soft, sorrowful wailing that chilled the bones of all who heard it. The locals believed she was the ghost of a pioneer woman named Amelia Clark, who had lost her husband to a prairie fire decades ago and had never been seen again after that fateful night. When Nathan arrived in Crosswinds, he was struck by the stark beauty of the open plains, where the wind whispered secrets of ages past. He received a warm welcome from the town's residents, who were desperate for relief from the haunting that had disturbed their peace for so long. Nathan's first step was to visit the local historical society to gather more details about Amelia and the circumstances surrounding her disappearance. The society provided him with diaries, land records, and old newspaper articles that painted a picture of Amelia's life and the tragedy that had unfolded. Armed with this knowledge, Nathan ventured into the plains at dusk, the time when Amelia's spirit was most often sighted. Setting up his equipment near the remains of what was once the Clark family homestead, Nathan waited as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the grassy landscape. As night fell, a figure emerged from the twilight, the silhouette of a woman in a tattered dress, her face etched with an expression of deep sorrow. "Amelia?" Nathan called out gently, not wanting to startle her. "I'm here to help you. I know about your loss, about your pain." Amelia's ghost paused, turning her gaze towards him. "He is gone," she murmured, her voice echoing across the plains. "I cannot find him. I cannot find peace." Nathan approached carefully. "Amelia, your husband's death was not your fault. You've mourned long enough. It's time for you to find peace, to join him." Understanding her attachment to the land and her unresolved grief, Nathan proposed a memorial service to honor both Amelia and her husband, inviting the entire town to participate. The service included readings from Amelia's diaries, a tribute to the pioneer spirit, and a collective expression of gratitude for the hardships endured by their ancestors. As the community came together to acknowledge Amelia's story and her contributions to the town's early days, the atmosphere changed. The wind seemed to carry a tune of resolution and release, and as the ceremony concluded, Amelia's figure appeared once more, this time with a serene expression. "Thank you," she said, her voice no longer filled with sorrow, but with a peaceful acceptance. "I am ready to rest." With a final look at the plain she had loved and called home, Amelia's spirit faded into the night, her departure marked by a sense of profound peace that settled over the area. Nathan watched as the last traces of her form disappeared, feeling a deep satisfaction in his heart. His work had not only calmed a restless spirit, but had also brought a community together, healing old wounds through the shared acknowledgement of their history. As he packed up his gear, ready to leave Crosswinds, Nathan felt reinvigorated by the knowledge that his journey was making a real difference, both in the realm of the living and the spectral. Each successful resolution strengthened his resolve to continue his work, helping those who could not find the way on their own, guided by his compassion and deep understanding of the spiritual connections that bind us all. Nathan's next destination was the remote town of Alderwood, nestled in a lush valley surrounded by dense forests and shadowed by the towering peaks of the surrounding mountains. This picturesque town was known for the echo of Alderwood, a spirit said to mimic the voices of hikers and lure them deeper into the forest, often causing them to lose their way. The locals believed this spirit was that of a young man named Colin, who had himself gotten lost in the forest many years ago and presumably perished. Upon his arrival in Alderwood, Nathan was struck by the town's natural beauty and the palpable sense of mystery that the enveloping woods seemed to exude. The locals were initially hesitant to talk about the echo, fearing that speaking too openly might attract its attention. However, Nathan's gentle demeanor and genuine interest gradually won their trust, and they shared their stories and personal encounters with the elusive spirit. With these accounts in hand, Nathan ventured into the forest. He set up camp near the site where Colin was last seen, a serene clearing surrounded by ancient trees. As dusk fell, the forest came alive with the sounds of nocturnal creatures, and Nathan prepared his recording equipment, hoping to capture the echo's voice. As night deepened, a chill set in, and the forest seemed to close in around him. That's when he first heard it, a voice, so like his own, calling his name softly from deeper within the woods. Nathan stayed put, knowing the dangers of following such sounds into the potentially disorienting forest terrain. Colin, Nathan called out into the darkness, his voice steady. I'm here to help you find peace. You don't need to be alone anymore. The voice paused, and the forest fell silent. Then, slowly, a figure emerged from the shadows. A young man, his appearance haggard and wild, his eyes filled with a mix of confusion and relief. Why do you remain here, Colin? Nathan asked, keeping his tone soft and empathetic. I got lost, Colin's spirit replied, his voice echoing around them. I kept calling for help, but no one came. Now I call to others, hoping they'll lead me out. Understanding the spirit's plight, Nathan explained to Colin that he had died, that he was no longer bound by the physical world. You can move on, Colin. You don't have to stay here, lost and calling forever. Let me help you find the way. Nathan conducted a small ceremony right there in the clearing, using elements of the forest, stones, leaves, and water from a nearby stream, to create a symbolic pathway leading out of the forest. He spoke words of guidance and release, urging Colin's spirit to leave the woods and find peace. As the ceremony concluded, the air lightened, and Colin's figure seemed to gain clarity. Thank you, he said, his voice no longer an echo, but clear and grateful. I see the path now. I can find my way. With a last grateful glance at Nathan, Colin walked towards the symbolic pathway and slowly faded from view, his spirit finally released from the endless cycle of calling and waiting. Nathan spent the night in the clearing, feeling a deep sense of peace that hadn't been there before. In the morning, he packed up his camp and made his way back to Alderwood. He shared his experiences with the locals, who were relieved to hear that the echo might no longer haunt their forest. As Nathan left Alderwood, the sun was rising, casting long beams of light through the trees, illuminating the forest in a way that seemed to promise new beginnings. With each spirit he helped transition, Nathan felt more connected to the delicate balance between life and the afterlife, each experience enriching his understanding and respect for both realms. As he drove away from the cliffs, Nathan was already receiving messages from other towns, each with its own mysteries to solve. His journey was far from over, and he was ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead, knowing that with each spirit helped, the world felt a little lighter, a little more at peace. Nathan's reputation as a resolver of supernatural mysteries grew, and soon he was called to the vibrant city of Melrose, known for its rich history and bustling art scene. Here, the local theater, an opulent old building with velvet curtains and gilded balconies, was reported to be haunted by the phantom performer. This specter was said to appear during rehearsals, delivering lines from forgotten plays with a voice that echoed through the empty auditorium, leaving actors and directors unnerved. Upon arrival, Nathan was greeted by the theater's current director, Laura, who was both fascinated and frustrated by the ongoing disturbances. She explained that the phantom performer disrupted rehearsals with eerie precision, often critiquing performances or suggesting changes to the productions. Intrigued by the unique nature of this haunting, Nathan agreed to spend several nights in the theater, hoping to witness the phantom's interventions firsthand. Armed with his equipment, he settled into the darkened auditorium as the evening's rehearsal commenced. As the actors began their lines, the lights flickered ominously, and a cold draft swept through the hall. Then, from the balcony, a figure emerged under the spotlight. A man dressed in the flamboyant style of a bygone era, his presence commanding yet ethereal. He began reciting lines from a play Nathan recognized as a lost work from the early 20th century. "Who are you?" Nathan called out, his voice echoing in the vast space. The phantom paused, turning his gaze towards Nathan. "I am Jonathan Avery, once the leading man of this very stage. I cannot rest while the theater struggles, while my greatest performance remains unfinished." Nathan listened, understanding the spirit's tie to the theater was not just about an attachment to the physical place, but a deep-seated need to see his legacy endure. "What can I do to help you find peace?" Nathan asked. Jonathan's response was simple yet poignant. "Complete my final performance. Let the curtain fall one last time." Moved by Jonathan's request, Nathan worked with Laura to resurrect the forgotten play, casting actors willing to partake in this unique and somewhat eerie production. As they prepared, Jonathan watched from the balcony, occasionally offering advice or correcting a line, his demeanor becoming more animated as the production neared completion. On opening night, the theater was packed, the air buzzing with anticipation and a hint of the supernatural. As the actors delivered their lines, Jonathan's voice occasionally mingled with theirs, creating a rich tapestry of the old and new. When the final curtain fell, the audience erupted into applause, not just for the living actors, but for the phantom performer whose passion had transcended his earthly bounds. As the applause died down, Nathan looked up at the balcony. Jonathan stood there, a smile of contentment on his spectral face. He bowed deeply to Nathan and the cast, and then, with a satisfied sigh, his figure dissipated into the air, his legacy now complete. The next morning, Nathan and Laura discussed the night's success, the theater filled with a new energy that promised further creative endeavors. Laura was grateful, not just for the cessation of the disturbances, but for the chance to bring a piece of theatrical history back to life. As Nathan left Melrose, the experience at the theater had reaffirmed his commitment to his work, each case reinforcing the idea that ghosts were not just remnants of the past, but bearers of stories needing to be told and understood. With his bag packed and his equipment ready, Nathan set off towards his next destination, eager to continue his journey into the realm of the unexplained, helping those he could along the way, both the living and the spectral. As Nathan drove away from Melrose, his next destination was already calling to him, a small coastal village known as Tudeview, reputed for its picturesque views and a haunting melody that was heard coming from the old lighthouse on foggy nights. Locals said it was the spirit of a lighthouse keeper's daughter, Marina, who had played the violin beautifully in life, and it seemed, continued to do so in death. Arriving in Tudeview, Nathan was welcomed by the salty sea breeze and a community that, while accustomed to the eerie strains of violin music drifting on the fog, was eager for resolution. The villagers loved the haunting beauty of the music, but the sadness in it tugged at their hearts. Nathan met with Helen, the current lighthouse keeper, who shared the story of Marina and her deep connection to the lighthouse. Marina had tragically lost her mother to the sea, and her music had been her solace. playing her violin by the window that looked out over the ocean, waiting for her father to return safely from his duties. Determined to understand more and to help Marina's spirit find peace, Nathan planned to stay in the lighthouse for a few nights. He set up his equipment in the room where Marina had played her violin, overlooking the vast ocean, and waited as the fog rolled in. That evening, as the mist thickened around the lighthouse, the soft but clear sound of a violin filled the air. The music was melancholic yet beautiful, resonating with a profound longing. Nathan felt the emotion behind each note. It was as if Marina was speaking through her music, expressing her loneliness and grief. "Marina," Nathan spoke softly into the room, hoping to reach her spirit. "Your music is beautiful. You're not alone anymore. I'm here to listen." As he spoke, the music paused. Then, gradually, a figure appeared by the window, a young woman with a gentle face, her hands holding a violin. She looked at Nathan, her expression one of cautious curiosity. "I miss him," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the sound of the waves. "I play to feel close to him, to feel less alone." Nathan understood her bond with her father, and her music was all she had left of her family. "Your father loved you very much, and he would want you to find peace," he gently told her. "You don't need to wait here any longer." With Marina's consent, Nathan arranged a small ceremony right there in the lighthouse. He invited the villagers to attend, and together they shared stories of both the lighthouse keeper and Marina, celebrating her life and her music. The ceremony concluded with a recording of Marina's violin music, which Nathan had captured, played back to her as a final performance. As the music played, Marina listened, her eyes closing slowly. When the last note faded, a smile touched her lips, and she nodded to Nathan. "Thank you," she said. Then, as peacefully as the fog lifts at the dawn of a new day, her spirit faded away, leaving behind a feeling of serenity. The villagers were grateful to Nathan for helping Marina find peace, and Helen decided to continue playing Marina's recordings at the lighthouse, turning it into a beacon of remembrance and beauty rather than sorrow. As Nathan left to view, the sun was breaking through the morning fog, casting a warm glow over the sea. Each spirit he helped reassured him of the profound connection between loss, love, and healing. His journey was a continuous path of discovery, bringing solace to those who lingered and those who lived, tethered by memories and melodies alike. Continuing his travels, Nathan's next destination emerged from an intriguing letter he received, inviting him to the ancient town of Sable Grove. The letter detailed the haunting presence of the Midnight Gardener, a figure seen tending to the vast and neglected gardens of the old Winchester estate, which had been uninhabited for decades. The locals suspected that the ghost was the estate's last groundskeeper, who had devoted his life to the gardens and reportedly died of heartbreak when the estate was abandoned. Upon arriving in Sable Grove, the air was thick with the scent of wildflowers in decay, a poignant reminder of the once glorious gardens now overtaken by the wild. The Winchester estate stood solemn and silent, its gardens sprawling like a forgotten kingdom. As Nathan walked through the gates, he felt a chill not brought on by the breeze, but by the palpable sadness that seemed to permeate the grounds. The first night, Nathan set up camp near the old greenhouse, where the Midnight Gardener was most often sighted. As the clock struck midnight, the sound of a shovel digging into the earth echoed in the still air, and a figure materialized among the shadows of overgrown rose bushes. The apparition, dressed in a faded gardener's uniform, worked tirelessly, his movements smooth and practiced, despite the ethereal nature of his form. "Hello," Nathan called out, approaching the figure with respect. "I'm Nathan. I've come to learn your story, to see if I can help you find peace." The gardener paused, turning towards Nathan. His face was lined with the years of toil, and his eyes showed a deep, unrelenting commitment to his work. "I must keep the gardens," he murmured, his voice as rough as the earth he tended. "They must not fade away, forgotten like the family who once walked them." Nathan nodded, understanding the gardener's bond to the land and his fear of abandonment. What if we restored the gardens? Nathan suggested. Brought them back to life, so they aren't forgotten. Would that set you free? The gardener's expression softened, a spark of hope flickering in his weary eyes. Yes, he replied, to see them alive again, to know they will continue after I am gone. Motivated by this new goal, Nathan collaborated with the local historical society and a group of volunteer gardeners from Sable Grove. Together, they began the laborious but rewarding process of restoring the Winchester Gardens. They cleared the overgrowth, replanted old flower beds, and repaired the broken paths and fountains. As the restoration progressed, the midnight gardener watched and sometimes guided their efforts, his apparition becoming a familiar presence, less spectral and more content, as the gardens returned to their former glory. Finally, the day came for the grand reopening of the Winchester Estate Gardens. The community gathered to celebrate, marveling at the beauty that had been reclaimed from neglect. Nathan watched as children played on the lawns, their laughter a stark contrast to the silence that had once ruled the estate. During the celebration, Nathan looked for the midnight gardener, finding him at the edge of the garden, gazing at the vibrant life around him. You can rest now, Nathan told him gently. The gardens will thrive. They will remember you. With a final, satisfied nod to Nathan and a look around his beloved gardens, the gardener's spirit slowly faded, his form dissolving into the garden air, leaving behind the legacy of his life's work. As Nathan left Sable Grove, he felt a profound connection to the cycle of life and renewal. Each spirit's resolution brought not only peace to the departed, but also healing and rejuvenation to the living, weaving together past and present in a continuous thread. With a heart full of stories and a spirit committed to his path, Nathan continued on his journey, driven by the belief that every place has a story, every ghost a longing, and every resolution a beginning. Nathan's path took him next to the historic town of Elderwood, renowned for its ancient trees and the legendary Witch of the Woods, a spirit said to protect the forest and its secrets. Local lore told of an old woman who had lived on the outskirts of Elderwood centuries ago, known for her herbal remedies and solitary lifestyle. After her death, sightings of her spirit began, always in the depths of the forest, often accompanied by a sudden growth of rare herbs and flowers where she walked. Upon arriving in Elderwood, Nathan found the town steeped in an atmosphere of reverence and mild fear towards the forest. The locals respected the forest, partly out of fear of upsetting the witch who protected it. They shared stories of lost travelers being led back to town by mysterious pathways of flowers and whispering winds that seemed to guide them away from danger. Intrigued and touched by the stories, Nathan ventured into the forest with the intent of understanding the witch's connection to the place and helping her spirit find peace, if it was indeed restless. He set up his base camp near an old gnarled tree, reputed to be the witch's favorite spot in the forest, and prepared for the night. As the sun set, the forest seemed to come alive with sounds and whispers. Nathan felt a presence almost immediately, a gentle but palpable force watching his every move. That night, as he sat by his campfire, the figure of the old woman materialized on the opposite side, her eyes bright and penetrating, her presence commanding yet not threatening. "Good evening," Nathan said, keeping his voice calm and friendly. "I'm Nathan, and I mean no harm. I've heard much about you and your guardianship of these woods." The witch's ghost nodded slightly, her voice's soft murmur blending with the rustle of the leaves. "I protect these woods and the creatures within. They are my life's work, my legacy." "Why do you remain?" Nathan asked. "Is there something unfinished that keeps you here?" She looked around, her gaze settling on the ancient trees surrounding them. "I fear what will happen to this place without my protection. The forest needs a guardian." Understanding her concern, Nathan proposed a solution. "What if we could ensure the forest is protected by law and by the community? Would that give you peace?" A thoughtful pause followed before she replied, "Yes. If I knew the woods were safe, I could rest." Motivated by this new objective, Nathan worked with the local conservation groups and the town council over the following weeks to establish protections for the forest. They set up conservation easements and educational programs to teach the community and visitors about the ecological and historical significance of the woods. Finally, with the protections in place, Nathan returned to the witch's tree. "The forest is now officially protected," he told her. "You can rest knowing it will continue to thrive." The witch of the woods looked around her beloved forest one last time, a smile of contentment passing over her spectral features. "Thank you," she whispered as she slowly faded away, her spirit dispersing like morning mist among the trees. As Nathan packed up his gear, he felt a deep satisfaction, knowing he had helped not only a spirit, but also ensured the preservation of a natural treasure. Each story he engaged with taught him more about the bonds between people, their land, and their history. Leaving Elderwood, Nathan felt reinforced in his purpose, ready to continue his journey wherever it might lead him, always with the aim to bridge the gap between the past and the present, the living and the spectral, ensuring peace and protection for both. Nathan's travels next took him to the bustling city of Silverpine, a place as steeped in modernity as it was in history. Here, the urban legend of the subway specter caught his attention, a phantom seen riding the subway late at night, often sighted by late-working commuters and night owls. This specter was rumored to be the ghost of a young man named Michael, who had tragically lost his life in a subway accident in the 1980s. Upon arrival, Nathan was struck by the stark contrast between the city's vibrant daytime hustle and the eerie quiet of its late-night hours. He contacted the subway authority, who were skeptical but cooperative, granting him permission to explore the subway lines after hours. Equipped with his night vision cameras and audio recorders, Nathan spent several nights riding the subway, observing and waiting for any sign of Michael's spirit. It was during one such ride, as the train clattered through the darkened tunnels, that Nathan first encountered the subway specter. The phantom appeared in a flicker of lights, seated at the far end of the car, staring blankly out the window. Nathan approached slowly, introducing himself softly. "Hello, Michael. My name is Nathan. I'm here to help if I can." The specter turned, meeting Nathan's gaze. The sadness in his eyes was palpable, his voice a hollow echo in the empty subway car. "I can't find my way home," he said simply. Understanding the nature of his haunting, Nathan asked, "What keeps you riding these trains, Michael?" "I was on my way home when it happened. I just want to get there," Michael's spirit responded, his tone tinged with a weariness that spoke of decades spent in liminal loops. Moved by Michael's plight, Nathan devised a plan to help. He researched Michael's last journey, gathering details from old transit logs and speaking with those who had known him. He discovered the route Michael had been on and the station he had intended to reach that fateful night. With this information, Nathan returned to the subway and rode the line to Michael's intended final destination. He invited Michael's spirit to join him, speaking words of guidance and reassurance. "Let's go home, Michael." As the train pulled into the station where Michael had meant to disembark all those years ago, Nathan led the specter out onto the platform. "You've arrived, Michael. It's time to step off the train and find peace." Michael's form paused, looking around the station that had changed so much since he last saw it. A look of realization dawned on his face, and slowly a smile broke through the sadness. "Thank you," he said, his voice gaining strength. With one last grateful glance at Nathan, Michael stepped off the platform and faded away, his spirit finally released from the endless journey. Nathan left the subway station feeling a profound sense of fulfillment, knowing he had helped another lost soul find their way. His experiences in Silverpine reinforced his resolve to continue his work, bridging the gap between the living and the dead, resolving hauntings with compassion and understanding. As he left the city behind, the first light of dawn was creeping across the skyline, casting long shadows and promising a new day. As Nathan drove away from Silverpine, his thoughts lingered on the encounters that had marked his journey, each unique yet bound by common threads of loss, yearning, and resolution. His next destination was the small town of Maple Hollow, renowned for its autumnal beauty, and the enigmatic painter of the leaves, a spirit said to appear each fall, painting landscapes on the canvases left in the old town square. These paintings would appear overnight, each canvas depicting stunningly vivid scenes of Maple Hollow's landscapes, imbued with an ethereal quality that no living artist could replicate. Curious about this creative manifestation and the story behind it, Nathan arrived in Maple Hollow as the leaves began their vibrant change. The town was buzzing with preparations for the annual Fall Festival, a tradition that celebrated the season, and unofficially, the mysterious paintings that added an extra layer of allure to the event. Nathan met with the festival organizers, who shared their mixed feelings about the painter of the leaves. While the paintings were a beloved mystery that drew tourists, they also stirred a sadness linked to the artist's unknown fate. Delving into the town's history, Nathan learned about Elias Ford, a local artist who had vanished many years ago, just as his career was beginning to flourish. Intrigued, Nathan set up his equipment in the town square, positioning cameras to capture any nocturnal activities at the spots where canvases were usually left. As dusk fell and the town settled into a chilly silence, Nathan watched and waited. Just after midnight, a figure emerged from the shadows, a man with an old-fashioned painter's smock, his hair wild, and his eyes intensely focused. He approached a blank canvas set up earlier by Nathan and began to paint with swift, sure strokes that belied the spectral nature of his hands. "Mr. Ford," Nathan ventured softly, not wanting to startle the spirit. The figure paused, turning to Nathan with a surprised flicker in his transparent eyes. "Yes, I am Elias Ford," he replied, his voice a distant echo. "Who are you, and why do you watch me?" Nathan explained his purpose gently, expressing admiration for Elias's work and sharing his understanding of the artist's connection to the town. "Your paintings are cherished here, Elias, but why do you remain? What keeps you tied to this place?" Elias returned to his painting, speaking as he mixed his ghostly paints. "I never got to show my true work, my best pieces. I died with so much left unfinished, so many ideas unexpressed. I paint to remember, to feel alive again." Moved by Elias's dedication and trapped creativity, Nathan suggested, "What if we held an exhibition of your work? Not just these nocturnal pieces, but all your work, both completed in life and death. It could be a retrospective, a celebration of your talent and passion." Elias considered the proposal, his brush pausing mid-stroke. "A show. All my work." A hopeful tone crept into his spectral voice, a stark contrast to the eerie setting. With Elias's agreement, Nathan worked with the town to organize the exhibition. They gathered all the known works of Elias Ford, including the paintings he created posthumously, and displayed them in the town hall, transforming it into a gallery that told the story of Elias's life and beyond. The exhibition was a resounding success, attended by art lovers from near and far. As they admired the depth and beauty of Elias's work, the spirit of the artist watched from the sidelines, his presence felt in the quiet appreciation of the crowd. At the exhibition's close, Elias appeared beside Nathan, his expression one of deep gratitude. "Thank you, Nathan. I can rest now, knowing my work, my soul will live on." With a final, contented glance at his legacy, Elias's spirit faded away, leaving behind a lasting impression on the town and its visitors. As Nathan left Maple Hollow, the painted leaves of fall swirling around him, he felt a profound connection to the cyclical nature of life and art. Each story he helped resolve added colors to his own life's canvas, painted with the hues of humanity and the essence of the ephemeral. Nathan's reputation as a bridge between the spiritual and the physical worlds continued to grow, drawing him towards the misty shores of Havenport, a coastal town shrouded in maritime lore. Here, he was called to investigate the ghost of the galleon, a phantom ship said to appear during stormy nights, casting an eerie glow over the water and leading to numerous sightings by local fishermen and sailors. Upon arriving in Havenport, Nathan was greeted by a chilly sea breeze and a community deeply entwined with their nautical heritage. The town's elders shared tales of the galleon, believed to be the lost ship Siren's Call, which had mysteriously vanished off the coast over 2 centuries ago with a valuable cargo and a crew destined for the New World. Determined to uncover the truth behind the spectral ship, Nathan coordinated with local historians and marine experts to track down archival records and old sea logs that might give clues about the ship's fate. Armed with this knowledge, he prepared for a night at the lighthouse overlooking the point where the ghost of the galleon was most frequently sighted. As a storm brewed over the horizon, the conditions seemed perfect for the phantom ship's appearance. Nathan set up his equipment, including video cameras and atmospheric sensors, to capture any anomalies. As the storm reached its peak, a ghostly silhouette materialized in the turbulent waters. A galleon, its sails torn but billowing in the wind, its deck bustling with spectral sailors. "Show yourself," Nathan called into the howling wind, directing his voice towards the ghostly apparition. "I seek to understand your story, to help you find peace." Amidst the chaos of the storm, a figure appeared on the ship's bow, a captain, his face weather-beaten, and his eyes reflecting the torment of a man lost at sea. "We search for home," the phantom captain bellowed back, his voice barely audible over the storm. "Trapped by a curse of our own making, bound to the sea until we can deliver our final cargo." Realizing the ship and its crew were doomed to relive their last voyage, Nathan knew he needed to find a way to break the cycle. He delved further into the ship's history, discovering that the Siren's Call was rumored to carry a chest of cursed treasures intended for trade, but believed to bring misfortune and doom to those who possessed it. With a daring plan in mind, Nathan enlisted the help of local divers and maritime archaeologists to locate the ship's wreckage, based on the ghostly course it seemed to follow. After several tense days of searching, the team located the sunken galleon, and within its hold, a sealed chest as described in the logs. The chest was carefully recovered and brought to shore, where Nathan conducted a ceremony to lift the curse, witnessed by the townspeople and the spirits of the crew, visible as shadows around the edges of the gathering. He opened the chest, and one by one, removed the cursed items, each receiving a blessing to neutralize its dark energy. As the last item was cleansed, a profound stillness overtook the night, and the spectral ship began to fade into the mist, its form dissipating until nothing but the calm sea remained. The captain's voice, now free of torment, echoed a final farewell. "Thank you for guiding us home." The town of Havenport celebrated their newfound peace with a festival by the sea, honoring the memory of the lost crew and celebrating the lifting of the curse. Nathan, feeling a deep satisfaction in resolving another spectral mystery, prepared to leave, his spirit uplifted by the community's gratitude. As he drove away from Havenport, Nathan reflected on the interconnectedness of history, the supernatural, and human endeavor. Each encounter taught him more about the complexity of the spirit world and its ties to the physical realm. With each resolution, he felt more attuned to the subtle energies that govern these spectral phenomena. As Nathan left the serene embrace of Havenport, the resolve in his heart grew stronger with each mile. The coastal town, with its reclaimed peace and revitalized spirit, was a testament to the tangible good that his work could achieve. Each spirit helped, each curse lifted, was not just a resolution for the tormented, but a healing for the community that lived with these hauntings. As he journeyed towards his next destination, Nathan reflected on the myriad souls he had encountered. Each spirit's story was woven intricately with human emotions, bridged by his interventions, reminding him of the profound impact one individual could have on both the living and the spectral realms. Driving through the dusk, the sky painted with strokes of crimson and gold, Nathan felt a profound connection to the universal narrative of seeking and finding peace. His life's work, though lonely at times, was deeply fulfilling. Each goodbye at the end of a haunting wasn't just a farewell to a spirit, but a release into a new beginning for both the ghosts and those they left behind. Nathan realized that his journey was about more than just resolving hauntings. It was about restoring balance, understanding, and most importantly, providing closure. This realization filled him with a sense of purpose and a quiet joy as he considered the many places still shadowed by the unknown, waiting for someone like him to shine a light. As the sun set, casting its last golden rays over the horizon, Nathan knew that the road ahead was long and undoubtedly filled with challenges. Yet he was ready to face whatever lay ahead, armed with empathy, knowledge, and a deep-seated belief in the interconnectedness of all things. The road stretched out before him, each turn revealing new stories waiting to be told, new mysteries to be unraveled. And as the stars began to twinkle in the twilight sky, Nathan drove on, his journey a never-ending quest to bring peace to the restless and understanding to the living. In this quest, he found not just ghosts and tales of old, but a deeper understanding of the human condition, forever weaving his own story into the tapestry of legends and real-life encounters. In the quiet solitude of his travels, Nathan found a sense of belonging to a world much larger than himself, a world where the past and present merged, where every haunted place held a history, every ghost had a tale, and every resolution brought a little more light into the shadows.